We have a quorum of the body. We are on Roman numeral number 2. This is the minutes from the January 7th, 2020 CACH meeting. They are in the packet. They are available on the table to my left. Is there a motion to approve as submitted? There's a motion by Mr. Lane. Is there a second? There's a second. Thank you. Is there debate or discussion concerning the minutes? Anyone with us this evening who has a correction to the minutes?
Sorry.
Sir, please.
Sorry about being an asshole.
Not a problem.
The bylaw is actually in my packet with the modifications that we've been talking about, and the old number says 9 people. And we will be considered as sufficient members present to be there at least 9 members.
Oh, I know what I did. I counted myself, and I'm not a voting member. There's 8. Okay, we'll sit here. The body does not have a quorum.
And Aaron's on the way.
Should be here, you just voted, should be here.
Okay.
Why can make it in the rain?
Just saying.
I'll tell you.
And I woke up late for making it out.
It doesn't say it on the agenda. People who might not want to stay until the end, they do that to learn these top things that they're going to
Yeah, let's see if we can make that happen in an efficient way. Yes. Yeah. Mr. President, we are on Roman numeral number 2. We have Roman numeral number 2, which is the minutes of the January 7th, 2020 CACH meeting. They are in the packet. Is there a motion to approve? As submitted. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Does anyone wish to debate or discuss the minutes as submitted? Does anyone who is with us this evening wish to add an addition or correction to our minutes? Seeing and hearing none, and without objection, the minutes will be deemed approved as submitted. Let me do a little bit of a change on the agenda, at the suggestion of one of our members, and this is a more of a practice of this body than a rule, and that is that if you are here this evening to speak to one of the agenda items and you cannot stay until that agenda item is heard, you are free to make your comments. I will ask you to limit them to 2 minutes. And if you do not speak now, you can speak when the agenda item is up if you're still here. If you know you're not going to be here and wish to address us, go ahead. This is on one of the agenda items that you're not able to stay for. Seeing and hearing no one who wishes to do that, thank you. We are on Roman numeral number 3. These are the CACH membership and bylaw revisions. This is in front of us because the body has, on occasion, during its work, felt as if there may be some benefit to adding additional members. When the body made its presentation to the City Council in December, the City Council, the minutes of the City Council meeting are a bit obtuse on this point. It's a little bit unclear whether the City Council, how it is that they think membership ought to be expanded on the body. My reading of it, certainly open to other people's point of view about how it is written, but my sense of how that was written is that the City Council is willing to have you expand your membership by 1. What they would like you to do is tell them when you do that, what category you are filling and who you are proposing to add. And then it seems as if they retain the right to say yes or no to that. There's a secondary issue here, it's not a secondary issue, it's a second issue, and that is that we have a member who has exceeded the number of unexcused absences, and last time we met, there was a thought that maybe it could be filled last time out of an abundance of courtesy. The body wanted to wait one more meeting to try to advise that person that it appears as if they vacated their seat on the CACH. That person is not here, and we have not received additional communications from that person. So without objection, I am now declaring a vacancy on the position that was held by your colleague Frank. You can, yes,
Is Stina's absence excused?
it is not.
Is she beyond the number of excused absences?
Let us get that for you. Can we get back to you in a few minutes with the answer on that?
The answer is yes. Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Mr. Lane?
Can I just add, though, that she has been, or it's been, her attendance has certainly been uneven, but she has been present recently at one of our committee meetings, and I think at one of the recent CACH meetings.
Yeah, I didn't start yesterday, she had been this year. Frank had raised it to him last week, and he said his phone was dead, and I was like, so I needed it.
Okay. Well, I've already declared that vacant, unless you want to take a formal action contrary to that. If I can speak on behalf of the body, consistent with the bylaws, that seat is vacant. So there are really two issues here, or two possible appointments. One is to replace Frank, and the other one is the expansion position. Amy has not resigned. No other resignations have been submitted. No one else has vacated their seat.
On the new bylaws.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Whoever wants to speak first, and then the other one.
It says Amy exiting January 21st on this.
Yeah, that has gotten pushed up to the next catch.
Okay.
She has not resigned.
February 4th.
I corresponded with her today. She's in another state today, and I corresponded with her and asked if we could have a conversation before she formally submitted a letter of resignation. And she corresponded back by email today saying yes, she was.
So once we get to the approval of the revised bylaws, we'll just be crossing that one out. We're changing it to February 4th. Is that
Yes.
Or we have not had it.
You mean the minutes or the bylaws?
the bylaws? If you look on the bylaws that was in tonight's packet, next to Amy's name, it says she's exiting tonight.
Okay. So let's strike that on the bylaws, strike that. It is really a matter before the body whether you would also like this evening to declare Stina Roach's seat as having been vacated.
And I just got a text from her, she's on her way.
On her way. So when she gets here, you'll still have an issue, which is to discuss with her, because under the bylaws, not counting tonight, she's already exceeded the excused, or met the threshold of unexcused absences. So when she gets here, we'll incorporate that. Do you have any idea, a few minutes maybe?
So let's sit on her way.
Okay. Let me ask the body, your next start item is a staff presentation on the executive orders and so on. Would you like to? Would you like to move to that and then back to this when Stina shows up? Would that be the preference of the body? Would you like to? Yes.
Would it be possible to talk about Evan Morrison as a possibility on the CACH, since we're talking about the list of names?
Well, let me do this. Yeah, let me just see if you would like to.
Yes,
I
I
want
want
to move everything on this item. Can we table
to
this and
delay
return to it
until
on?
Stina gets here and then have the discussion.
Okay.
It keeps it consistent.
All right. I'm sorry.
It makes it consistent.
Okay, so without objection, we'll table this item until Ms. Roach arrives, and then we'll return to it as quickly as we can at that point. Members, we are at the staff, row number 4, staff presentation of the governor's executive orders and regional homelessness advisors interim report.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're just going to break down quickly what's in the report, which you guys may or may not have had an opportunity to read. The following presentation basically summarizes what was in the packet. So first off, just an overview of the state, the proposed budget for 2021, in which there are many investments that have challenges in front of us. So bullet points, hopefully you guys can read those. There's a lot of text, we don't need to go through them in absolute depth, but generally, $750 million fund to help get folks off the street and into support services as quickly as possible. Additional, and a creation of the California Access to Housing and Services Fund, which will help try to make it so folks don't fall into homelessness, so helping pay the rent for those who might be on the verge, and supporting getting units on board. And these monies are going straight to service providers. Additional budget includes $695 million, going all the way up to $1.4 billion in 2020, to help transform Medi-Cal to boost the services associated with that. And then the community care collaboration pilot has a budget of $24.6 million, which is going up to $364.2 million to help place individuals and to get more access and services for those who need mental health support services. So lots of big money items that the state is considering on various areas that may trickle down and or will certainly be available on the state level to help move towards some of the big challenges that the state is facing. The executive orders, there were 2 executive orders that were attached to your agenda packet, and a couple big ticket items on them. Immediately establish the California Access to Housing and Services Fund. The fund will receive future state appropriations. It also will allow for philanthropic donations from the private sector to be put into this same fund. And the fund will be used to help create affordable housing, provide rental subsidies, and stabilize. Stabilizing board and care homes, so just basically trying to get more housing established. Immediate state-owned land to be utilized for temporary housing for those who are experiencing homelessness. The governor tasked the Department of General Services to identify properties. There's an AP tasked the inventory to start being created, so it has been being created. It's not quite officially done yet, but they are creating an inventory of basically lands that could be utilized by local partners, counties, cities, nonprofits on a short-term basis to provide emergency housing. Stand-up temporary camp trailers for the state fleet. So the governor has directed the Department of General Services to send out 100 trailers. They've already deployed, I can't remember how many to Oakland, I think 40 of them throughout Oakland. to be utilized as for emergency shelters. And then to establish a multi-agency state crisis response team to help get everybody together to be working on this area. And those are the big ticket items from the Newsom's executive orders. In addition to your packet, you have the interim report from the Governor's Council on Regional Homelessness Advisors, which is an interim recommendation. So this council was established, and they are in similar to you guys as the CACH. The governor created a council. They have been working on the topic at a state level, and they have done their first set of interim reports, and that's what you have is the interim. So they are continuing to work. They've just submitted an interim report. And of those, some big ticket items, adopt a comprehensive crisis response strategy. So they're trying to try to pull all the different agencies together to be able to work together on the state level. So assign responsibility for both the resources needed and the responsibility for implementation of the different recommendations. Create a single point of authority for homelessness in state government, so that as opposed to having multiple different pathways, trying to come up with a single high-level official and team to establish and coordinate housing, health, and human services and other state responsibilities related to homelessness. Create an enforceable, result-based accountability mandate in homelessness. So they're trying to come up with some tangible and accountable measures in homelessness. So some big ticket items that they are recommending the governor move forward with. So that's just a quick summary of what you got in the packet of what's going on at the state level.
Robert?
I wanted to know what efforts the city staff has taken to work with the state to find out the processes for potentially applying for the use of those 100 trailers, timelines for doing that, and staff's understanding of what the next steps for the state coming out with their list of available excess properties, if you will, and if there's any sort of plan to do anything with that list.
So the city has been working, we've reached out to all the appropriate state agencies, and as may not be a surprise to some, the governor announced before the staff was ready for it to be announced, apparently because the lists aren't done yet, the application process isn't ready yet, so we are awaiting all of those things to come through, in which case we will jump on it. But right now, the current approximate date of the list is the 31st, the end of this month. And the application, I don't think we have a time for I don't think they yet know how they are going to allocate and determine that, but we are in communication with the offices that are trying to figure this out.
If I might say a couple of things on this. One, in terms of trying to have some idea of, gee, what would our fair share look like? When I represented you in the legislature, whenever a statewide number was thrown out, my office, my staff would use 1% of that number because we're roughly 1% of the state's population, Santa Cruz County, roughly. So we would use roughly 1%. So if the governor's got, X amount of dollars, figure out what 1% is. That sort of would be our fair share. With regard to the trailers, there's 100 statewide. If you did 1%, you'd get a trailer, but they've already given 40 out without a process. So you've got 60 left, so maybe you get 1/6 of one, but in any event,
You get the trailer.
the others, you get the trailer hitch. That's very good, good stuff. A couple of things about the budget. The governor's released the budget. It's a good thing to look at it because it will give you a semi-accurate view how much money is available and how many claims there are against that. What's more important to do is not look at the money per se, but look where the governor is trying to spend it. The reason I say that is that in the first week in May, around the end of the first week, beginning the second week in May, the Governor's Department of Finance will issue a May revise. That is a revision of the assumptions of caseload and revenue, which drive the revenue side and the expenditure side of the state budget. So how many folks actually are on the various health and human service eligibility lists, how many people are in CSU and K-12 schools and prisons and all that stuff. They will have a much better number in May than they do now, because the number they're using now was the number that they estimated on Thanksgiving. That's when the input to the governor's January budget is closed off. So they're using Thanksgiving figures for a fiscal year that starts July 1st and goes to June 30th of next year. So it's impossible to have highly accurate numbers of either revenue or caseloads. By the time you get to May, another quarter of sales tax and all the state income tax and capital gains tax are all in, and you know it for certain what those numbers look like, as well as another quarter and a half of caseload data. So I know that. I just want you to have familiarity with how the budget process is going to work. It's not going to get real clear for spending in the 2021 fiscal year until about that second week in May. And the legislature and the governor work real hard for about 30 days because they have to get a balanced budget back to him based on those May revised figures by the middle of June, so the governor can use his blue pencil authority to reduce or eliminate any area of spending. So you have an adopted state budget on July 1st, on the first day of the new fiscal year. I would say that it's worth looking at the distinction between general fund appropriations and bond appropriations. In the fiscal year we're in right now, the governor's spending in the area of housing was about $1.7 billion. Took $1 billion out of the $4 billion housing bond that you approved last year. Added about $700 million of discretionary general fund money, and that money is being programmed and spent as we speak. The bond money comes in 7 different categories. There's not one penny of it guaranteed to any community. It is all competitive. Don.
Yeah, I just want to go back to just make sure I kind of, as best you have it on the property, the state property, that even if we wanted to, we, the city as a whole, wanted to move on that, we're not sure which properties are going to be made available yet. Is that right?
Correct.
And then secondly, when they are kind of named on a list, then there's also going to be some kind of process to request permission to use that particular parcel.
And then also, I suppose before that, there would be an examination of, is this parcel viable? Does it have all the needs that we have? Is this a viable parcel?
Okay.
That has, does it have the right access to emergency services? Is there water? Can we get water there? All
But
that.
is that part a city's decision? I'm just trying to understand what the state's limitations are. That when you're talking about the infrastructure and what's of it, is it a workable space? That would be the city determining whether we felt that. But in terms of the state, they have to say it's on the list, and yes, we give you permission based on an application to.
That is our understanding, but none of that has been delineated. But we understand it to be as a list of parcels that could be utilized, and we don't know what the application process is. Are we renting it? Do we have to, how it's not renting without payment? But I mean, is there some sort of, I'm sure there's some dog line to sign up, but all of that, they're no longer giving us that information. I don't think they.
Thank you.
The first furthermore, the first of the executive, it talks about cities and counties and everybody, like locals, talking about what land you already have. Is there some thought of having that conversation between all the different entities
currently has access to. In past iterations of looking at both sides, there have been culmination of those incidents that we have. What is that land we have available to work with or viable? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, is there a list or something that's, it's saying, we're gonna give you as much land as we can, we're stretching here. Make sure you guys are all doing the best you can.
Doing your part, too.
Yeah. So is there gonna be some list that's gonna be shared or something, if there's some sort of further collaboration?
With the county? Collaborating with whom?
All counties, cities, public transit agencies, special districts, school districts, tribal governments, and non-government actors, including businesses, faith-based organizations, and nonprofit agencies are requested to examine their own ability to provide shelter. So it's lots of
So we've been doing, we've been collaborating and trying to find land that is viable. So that is an ongoing process. Is that what you're? So we have an ongoing process going on with that. Is there an actual list of the, is that what you want to do? We have a written down list?
Yes, and whether we're actually like, there's been a press release to businesses or to anybody, hey.
Oh, asking the
There's this new
community.
thing and we're looking for land kind of thing.
I do not know if we have reached out to, or if we plan to reach out to a business to give us land.
One of the things on applying for state funding is showing that you've done all the
Well,
other
we
stuff
can-
that you could have.
Yeah, we can show that we put in a good faith effort on this, and we have not reached out to businesses. We can.
Yeah, I think that's something to consider.
Further on this? Stony?
For the benefit of the folks who are in the audience, there's often a question that arises in the conversation about the use of court order. And they, especially when something like this is lifted up. And I think for folks who are not familiar with it, Fort Ord, for one thing, is not in this county. It is in Monterey County, and they have a redevelopment commission. And if I recall rightly, and Fred, you might be able to speak to this, that commission, their bylaws requires 100% vote in favor of something. So there's no majority rule on making allocation. And most of that land has been broken up between Marina and Seaside and other entities. So I just felt that the public here should be aware that that necessarily may not be an option for everybody to see on the table. So thank you.
Further on this? Oh, excuse me, Candace, yes.
So if this body wanted to advocate for the allocation of that funding to come to this county and city, what would be the most appropriate avenue for that kind of work? Or is
I'll be glad to make a suggestion. Maybe Mr. Blaine does too. I'll take the first stab at it. I think a resolution from this body to the city council may be a good way to proceed, which in the same way the governor has had his whereases, the state, the condition of things, and then now therefore be resolved to do these things. A resolution fits that kind of format. But Mr. Blaine, you have
Well, let me make sure, could you say your question again, because I want to make sure I really got it to answer.
yes, the question is if we want to advocate for that funding,
The state dollar,
the state money to come to the county and the city, then what are appropriate avenues for doing that as a body?
so one piece is a lot of the state money specifically for homelessness, not the housing money that Fred was also talking about, which is different, is about this year, and it'll probably be something like it next year, about half of it goes to the county government, the board of supervisors, in other words, and about half of it goes to the Homeless Action Partnership, which is a partnership between the cities and the county and several service providers in the community and a few other community representatives. And that, so how those two entities will be the primary decision makers about how that money is used once it arrives in our county.
Okay.
And so what we would want to do is aim, maybe through the city council, but aim the advocacy toward the board of supervisors and toward the Homeless Action Partnership Governing Board.
Okay. Thank you.
Further on this item, Keith, would you like to address this item?
Yeah, we were, Keith McHenry, and with the Homeless Union and with Food on Palms. And we were asked by city councilors to respond to the governor's call for a homeless emergency. And we've identified one piece of property, and we have experience operating a self-managed camp at that facility. And so they are encouraging this committee to forward that immediately to them, since we are seeing a rather rapid increase in deaths on the street. And so that would be very good to get on with this right away. And what Serge was reading, we are a community group, we don't need to be approached, we're ready to go. You don't need money from the state, I'll raise the money. I can easily raise the money to operate the camp. I paid for the last camp, got it started with my own money. We can definitely do it. So you don't need to go through that kind of process. You can just go to city council and say, this is the proposal, would be something that we endorse. I want to also point out two other things. You were saying that the budget will be more fine-tuned in the first couple of weeks of May. And as people here are probably aware, if the new media reports are accurate, there will be an additional 700,000 people losing their food stamps in April. So there will be an extra number of people on the streets or hungry anyway, and we're already seeing people come. Any one of us that gets food stamps, my food stamps went from the normal $193 a month to $30. I just talked to a friend, a Food on Palms activist in Oklahoma with 2 children, a single mom with 2 children. Hers went down to $15 a month. So, and you can talk to most people on the streets. The food stamps are already disappearing, and they haven't got to that count. And then the final thing I wanted to say was Stoney's talking about. The Stewart-McKinney Act was actually passed back in the 90s. And there was a very strong effort by people that were concerned about the increased number of homeless people to actually acquire that. So we used to go to the HUD auctions and try to bid on enlisted persons housing at the Presidio, which was a military base at the time, and by law was to be turned over to nonprofit groups for housing for homeless people. We were able to actually gather up many people that actually lived in Waring housing when they were in as soldiers. And we eventually had to take over those buildings repeatedly in a large campaign called Homes Not Jails and Religious Witness with Homeless People. And eventually that just became condominiums, and no such property was actually turned over. Treasure Island was never turned over, even though we tried that. And the Stewart-McKinney Act is still in force, yet not been actually enforced since, I think, 1992 or something like that, maybe 1993. So anyway, the property where Camp Phoenix we've already talked to, we've been in correspondence with Caltrans, Region 5. We've been in contact with Steinberg's office. We're working with them. And we'd like to work with this committee and have this committee at the very next city council meeting introduce this idea to city council and say there won't be a budget item on it, there will be nothing. Somebody just has to go out and unlock the huge number of chain link locks on the gate and let us go, because we can show that it can happen. We can be an example to the rest of the state on how to address this emergency. That land is half owned by Caltrans and half owned by the city, and so we should be able to move in immediately, and it needs to happen immediately, because, like I say, I'm going through rafts of tarps out there trying to keep people dry. They are having their sleeping bags stolen by the authorities. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that, so we need to get on it right now. It's an emergency. It can't wait. It just can't wait. People are dying. We've got to get that through our heads. These are our neighbors. They're suffering. It is a panic, and we do not have time to talk about all these different things. So we just have to get to it and do it, and I hope that this body votes tonight to send this proposal to City Council forthwith. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Good evening.
Public comment on this? So I too have reached out to Caltrans Region 5 there in San Luis Obispo. The person in charge is Andrew Wire, something like that. So I was discussing with him what are the procedure and where they at on these particular parcels. And of course, there's 4 in Santa Cruz County, 1 in Live Oak, and of course the old Ross, half the Ross campsite. And the 2 parcels across the street will be blown away for the new interchange anyway. So anyway, they're trying to get their arms around. His response was, A, they're not going to be giving these parcels away, or they're going to be leased at market rate, which means they're going to have to do an appraisal, and then they're going to come up with a leasing rate. Only cities, now again, it's all new to Caltrans and everybody, this issue here, but he was saying that cities only are the ones that have to bless the operator, and select it and bless that operator. They're going to be expected to do market rate. And it's probably, they're building this airplane as they're flying it. They're trying to figure it out. Nothing will happen immediately, particularly given the government and so forth. So I just thought I'd add that.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
My name is Barbara Riverwoman, and I just finished reading a biography of Dorothea Dix. I don't know whether any of you have read anything by her or about her. She was a famous reformer of the homeless insane during the 19th century, pre-Civil War. And at the time, the situation of the homeless was horrible, probably more horrible than it is today. And the biggest problem the biggest challenge for her was trying to educate the country, and she went from state to state to state and managed to sway one state legislature after another. The biggest challenge was to help them understand that you shouldn't ever lump the homeless, the impoverished, together with the mentally ill, together with the criminal. And at the time, they were all being thrown in the prisons and treated, all of them, chained to the wall, beaten, starved. It was horrible. And so it looks to me, just, this is at first blush, I've never seen this before, but to put the homeless under one category on the state level seems to me the exactly wrong approach. Unfortunately, Dorothea Dix's reforms held in states all the way from Massachusetts down to Kentucky and Alabama and Mississippi. They didn't actually sustain themselves after the Civil War, just because the country had been dealt such a blow. But they were successful institutions, and they actually kept on until Reagan shut down all the mental hospitals. And that was, in some ways, the remnant of her work in the 20th century. So it seems to me we're going backwards if we're lumping them all together. And, a human being who is mentally ill is really different than a human being who is coming out of prison with a criminal background, and is different from a person who is simply out of a job and impoverished. So I would question that. And then I also just want to second what Mr. McHenry said about the Phoenix camp. I talked to some of the people who were instrumental in getting that started. And it was astonishing, the energy, the goodwill, the commitment they had to doing it themselves, and they were raking, they were spreading the chips, they were working in collaboration with the police, with the fire department, they were making lanes of access, all on their own, but in collaboration with the fire department. And we shut them down. And to me, that just seems criminal. And it gives me the message that we really don't want homeless, that the real force behind this community is to get rid of the homeless, not to really help them and us all find real solutions. I think real solutions are there, and I think the homeless were onto a good thing, and I really do wish that you would seriously think about letting Food Not Bombs have a chance to be the manager and funder of Camp Phoenix, and let's just see what self-governance would do. If it did, we'd make a name for ourselves maybe all over the state. We need to be bold. This is an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you.
15 seconds.
That's all I need. I'd be very, very cautious about recommending any organization to reopen Ross Camp without the complete 90% buy-in from every merchant in that complex. That provides a lot of sales tax revenue to the city. They get burned once, they don't need to burn again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me see, folks, this was on your agenda as an informational item. Do you wish to do anything with regard to taking some portions of this or some elements of this that you want more information on so that you can take action? CACH, I'm looking for a little guidance on how you would like to proceed here.
That stuff.
You
Said
had,
stuff.
yes, sir. You had your Serge and then Don. Serge?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if we could, on that first furthermore,
Yes.
if there's something more we could do, the city could do to find non-state land that would be available as well. Whether it's starting a collaborative conversation or something like that. It's trying to show them that we're working too, so it's pretty important to get money.
Don?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of obvious, but it just seems important to say that every time, and maybe we don't, perhaps not even waiting for a meeting of the CACH, when there is more information about the land, what sites are going to be made available and what the process is for pursuing use of those sites, that we would just get that right away.
I'd just like to say that I hope that at a future meeting that we could take action on some things related to this agenda item.
Okay. What? Aaron?
Just one question, Fred. So would it be correct to assume that the soonest that there would be additional state money available to fund the operation of a new camp at a section spot would be July? Or when would there be like more money that the county might have available to them?
Hang on just
pass
1
on?
second on that.
There's another amount of state money, HHAP, and the county and the half of the domicile are applying next month. 2.2 for the county,
But my question
2.6
is
for the half.
when? My question is when?
April-ish.
Would be the money would actually be available to spend?
Okay, so I wanted to verify my understanding, but I suspect Mr. Lane has also quite good information. So why don't you take a stab at it, and I'll be glad to fill that in there more.
Well, it's a little, I don't want to surge, and I have a similar understanding that the governing body of the Homeless Action Partnership is meeting literally tomorrow to start its application to the state for the almost $5 million that's coming to both the county and the Homeless Action Partnership. There's really an effort to wed those two pots of money together into one. And that will articulate not exactly where the money's going to go, but like what kinds of programs should be prioritized. Once that's, then the state has to approve that, saying, yeah, we're good with that. And that will happen pretty quickly, in a month or so, I think. And then once that happens, even though the state won't give us the money probably that quickly, we could really know that we're getting it. So I know that's not completely clear, but we probably could start really banking on the money being here by around April. I mean, not being here, but that we could be confident as a county that the money was going to be here. There was like a kind of a sense of, yeah, it's coming.
We being half.
Yeah, we
Not
being
this
the
one.
county, yeah, not this one. We being that half and the county working together would be able to really make a commitment of funds.
I just wanted to add
So
that there is.
let me call on folks if we could, because other hands can go ahead too, but please go ahead.
Oh, so there are multiple pots of money The money, approximately 5 million that Don's referring to is the HCAP money, which has already been earmarked, and the state has already determined that the county and the Homeless Action Partnership in Santa Cruz are getting approximately $5 million. In addition to that, there's another $750 million that's coming down the pipe statewide. The government has said they hope to get it out to counties in July or August, and we don't know what amount of that we will be receiving.
And what I would add generically to that, Aaron, is that the state basically operates in 3 fiscal years simultaneously. Last fiscal year, they're auditing. This fiscal year, they're spending consistent with the Budget Act, which is a bill, which is a law, and they're preparing for the next fiscal year. The answer to your question then, in that regard, is that their governor's executive order speaks to both money in this fiscal year that has been authorized by the legislature, as well as he is proposing spending for the upcoming fiscal year to fund the executive orders. So he's operating those 2 fiscal years. He asked if there are other questions or comments, people want to act on this study.
I was wondering if it would be in the interest of moving this forward, the city, especially with the agenda of the city council, to have at least what I maybe refer to as a housekeeping motion from the body in support of this. What's your thought?
In support of this meeting,
To the state proposal.
state what the governor is proposing through, well, what he is doing through his executive order authority.
Yes.
Say,
Which is kind of consistent with what Sturgis is suggesting too, right?
okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'd offer one up, because this, serve as a draft, but, give me a second here. I move that the CACH recommend that the city collaborate with the county of Santa Cruz to request funding for, give me a second, read my own handwriting here, for property funding property and materials and/or materials through the state of California pursuant to the executive order NORA 2320, and to assign staff to work with CACH to continue information education related to the process.
There's a motion. There's a second. Under debate and discussion.
Friendly amendment.
We'll see if it's friendly.
All in judgment.
Exactly.
Megan, are you?
I'm nowhere near it.
Yeah, it's so to get it up. Okay. Fair enough.
Missed a good chunk of it.
Okay. Move the study one more time.
Okay, let's see, that the CACH, recommend the CACH that the city collaborate with the county of Santa Cruz. Most of this I know you already done, so bear with me. With the county of Santa Cruz to request funding, property, and/or materials.
Owned property and or materials.
From the state of California.
The state of California.
Governor's executive order.
We'll fill the numbers in.
And we'll just put a period in there for the sake of brevity, and then assign staff to work with the CACH to continue information education related to the process
Continue information.
and education.
All right, can you look at that study and see if that captures what you just said?
That is close enough for government. Thank you.
go. There's a motion and a second, and Serge, Don, and Serge, you have the floor for a potential friendly amendment.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, the first furthermore. An ongoing update on the status of that first furthermore thing. I don't know how to say it. The term.
Is there maybe
What
one?
you're trying to do, and we're good. We're good. Is it,
That's what I meant.
Okay. Okay. Does that sound friendly to you, sir?
What's the further one? I think what you're asking about is, I think it's still what I'm saying with education information.
Yeah, as they come back each meeting, just to say how that specific thing
Yeah,
is going to
I didn't, frankly, I was trying to characterize this, so it's kind of broad, not real specific, so we just have us on record that we support what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, I'm fine if you want to put that in there, I think it's redundant.
Okay, it's accepted. It's been accepted.
Yeah.
Somewhat reluctantly, but accepted. There we go. That's right. Okay, further debate or discussion on this item? Anyone further, I'm sorry, yes, Rob?
So, on that friendly amendment, are we incorporating anything from that? I'm just trying to, I would potentially offer a friendly amendment just to clarify that we would request that the city work with the county, public transit agencies, special districts, school districts, tribal governments, et cetera, on identifying locations.
It's just, it didn't show up there.
What did?
I didn't put it in the furthermore, I didn't put it in the whole thing. That's what he was saying, he didn't.
No, he has accepted it, so let's slow down. We're gonna, in order to move forward, we're gonna go backwards. So let's make sure we get yours in the way you want it. Is it up there or you want to? Okay, where are you at in this? When looking up here, just so
It's
you
not there
know.
at all, yeah.
No, I know.
Yeah, so just.
Where do you want to put it? At the end, the middle, the beginning? Or okay.
Related to the process. And ongoing updates related to this, and then you could quote it or, I don't know how to refer to further.
Okay.
Instead of the process.
And there is a specific furthermore that you are trying to address, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at that.
Which executive order is this furthermore coming from, the first one or the second one?
Because it's only a recommendation.
That's 19 or 20.
Which one, which
Executive order 19 or 20? 19, good. We're getting there, here we go.
Number 5.
And number 5? Yeah. Okay.
And are we putting literally the entire verbiage into this motion, or are you trying to meld them?
Fred, can I ask a point of clarification about this? Are we being overly, and are we kind of getting too far into semantics here? Like, this is all a part of an executive order because it just says requested and not ordered to examine their own ability, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is that a true distinction, or is this in fact also part of the order?
And I think that's, is what part of the order?
So Serge, I think, is very reasonably asking the question of, this just says that all of these different entities are requested to examine their property. But I don't know if that's just an alternative verb or if it's really an order.
So
Because it's a part of the executive order.
Okay, so the executive, the governor's authority extends to all aspects of state government. So he can issue an executive order and he can direct, as the chief executive officer, all of the executive branch of state government to do things that are not inconsistent with state law. Ones are consistent with state law. What the governor, I think, is doing here in this particular reference is he is directing, I think it's general service under somebody, to work with these entities. He can't make a school district do something or make a city do something or whatever. He's asking, he's directing, which he can do in general services. You consult with all these people. You can't make them consult with the state. So I think that's where that language turns. Let me see if the language is up there the way you want it
The
to be.
language is not up there, so I'm still trying to understand.
Sure.
If you're typing this whole thing out and we're going to stick it into this,
Yeah.
then I will start typing.
So we are talking about on 19, Executive Order 19, under the orders, it is hereby ordered, number 5, is that correct?
No, it's beneath number 5.
Yeah, it's underneath 5.
It's a separate numbering system. And it's not under a number.
And I don't need to do, what do you do for all the
Well, excuse me, so item 5, if I am reading it correctly, item 5 has a lead paragraph and then several subsequent paragraphs.
That's not,
I'm sorry.
it's not the right.
It was the first one, I was expecting, wasn't it 20 and not 19?
This is,
That's just.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ally, it's on 20.
Yeah, she was looking at 20, the first furthermore.
now I'm at least oriented.
It's on 20, Fred, not 19.
I'm sorry, folks, I apologize for having been, it was not 19? Or it is?
It's on 20,
Yeah.
second to last page. The furthermore is in bold.
And right above that, that
No.
number 5.
Yeah,
Is the
yeah, that's the
first
5 we're referring to.
Okay, that's the 5 you're returning to. And sir, your desire here, your intent with this is to just state your intent. What you want to do, it's not what we're writing up on the board. You're trying to get what in this motion?
To take that recommendation and for us to also recommend to the city and the county to do it, not just hear it and ignore it. To make a new effort to quantify and to get collaboration for any possible problems in
Phoenix can't.
Okay. Yes.
What I'd like to clarify is that I was intentional about putting the executive order number there because that made it inclusive automatically of the motion. So the wording was already included, and it was just, I was trying to keep it simple because I think the more complex you make it, then we're.
Okay. So I think your conversation is now with Serge. Serge, so if I understood what Stoney just said, it's that in effect, the executive order is included by reference. But you're trying to, if I understand it, you're trying to do something slightly different, which is that you want the city to engage in outreach and collaboration with other entities. Is that correct?
Yes.
Consistent with the governor's executive.
The governor's order tells the state agencies what to do,
Yes,
and our recommendation is to support that.
yes.
There's a recommendation from the governor for the city to, within its own jurisdiction and properties, to try to have some collaboration.
I see.
And I'm trying to say, we should go with that too.
All right. And now let's get to writing. You haven't written anything on this,
I
correct?
have, yeah, I don't know if it's a separate motion,
Let's
but I
take
have
a
it
look
up
at it.
there.
Let's take a look at it.
The second paragraph is verbatim from the governor's order.
And so your desire is that in this, you would like the city of Santa Cruz to do this outreach and collaboration.
To collaborate with those agencies to see what other property might be available on a short term.
Okay, so long as everybody, so you're satisfied that that covers, that that's your motion?
Well, it's not a separate
It's
motion.
worded, yeah.
And you would like to insert it into, as a friendly amendment to Stony Brook's recommendation, motion. Am I right?
Unless somebody can find a less worded way.
Okay, well, let's not worry more or less wordy, let's just worry about moving on. Get our business done. Okay,
express my support of the intent of Sorge's friendly amendment, and also to clarify that I believe it's important to spell this all out and to specifically request or specifically recommend that the city take action to work with the counties, public transit agencies, et cetera, rather than just taking it all as part of the governor's order, where the governor's order simply recommends such a thing happen. This is just sort of re-emphasizing that we are recommending the city to take that action.
Thank you. Further on the motion. Further on the motion. Keith to the motion. Can you do it in about a minute?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not about land, and we are actually proposing an actual collaboration with the city and the state and the county, and I didn't hear anybody making a motion to forward the proposal to have a self-managed camp at the already identified properties at where Ross Camp was. And so it would be, I would think you would want to have somebody introduce that and second it and then vote on it and then send it to the city council. Because here it is, it's right in it follows directly what is up there, and it would be more powerful if CACH endorsed it, and because it's an actual solution that at least gets 150 people some safe place to be, and it's something that can be done immediately. So I encourage somebody to make that motion and second it and send it to the city council.
Thank you, Keith. Further discussion or debate? Don?
You know, I want to comment somewhat on what Keith said, but maybe make it a little more general statement. That I think one of the things that's frustrating for all of us, whether in the audience or on the CACH, is that this, you know, what we're dealing with, you know, the most important thing is that it is an emergency for the people outside, and that change, you know, what's happening is dynamic. But more relevant perhaps to this moment is that every meeting we have a whole bunch of new things coming up, new information, new proposals. They're not generally on our agenda. They kind of try to jump to the head of the line, and I don't mean that as a judgment. They have a reason they would like to jump to the head of the line, but we have all these things we've been working on for months, that are trying to be a set of coherent recommendations to the city council, and it's just not possible for us to take every single thing that comes up and just go, yeah, that's it, that's our recommendation, let's run with it, because I think our responsibility is greater than that, and even with a specific recommendation which has merit from Food Not Bombs and the Homeless Union, it's not a full proposal that I know enough about to say, oh yeah, I want to recommend that. And that's because we are taking enough time to really think through the details of some of the things we're recommending.
That's why we gave it to you several weeks ago, so we're still waiting.
Ms. Riverwoman on the motion.
Yes. It seems to me that when I read in the newspaper about the executive order, I remember thinking, wow, the land that they're describing precisely defines the Ross Camp area. It said public land next to a highway, non-residential. And I'm just wondering why you can't put that in the motion, because it was in the executive order. I don't know where it is, but does anybody know where that is? Anyway, I just wish it seemed to me to define that specific land perfectly.
Thank you. Here. Yes.
For Keith's thing, I would offer to sit down with you. There are some parts of that I would like the supervision or something to be a little more spelled out and that kind of thing. But I would work with you on something if you're willing to bring back and to make a motion of. But as it sits right now, for myself, I'm not willing to support it.
Getting back to this resolution that we have up here, hope that I could just make a friendly amendment to the friendly amendment, just to better tie the two bits together a bit. Just by adding,
Ralph, I think I can fix it. My second part of what I was gonna say was fixing that.
yeah,
A friendly amendment that the city, maybe if you want to go up to where it starts, yeah, that the city work with the county. Take out that city's right in front of it, yeah. And then it goes all the way down and takes out our requested changes and says the examiners will usually provide. Does that work?
as long as that is in reference to a recommendation that, yeah.
Stoning agreeable?
I'm fine.
Okay.
So
And
where,
then, I'm sorry, please, just go ahead.
where is this language going into your original motion? I'm not there on that. Or is this a whole separate motion?
So I guess I would say, and recommends that. And we could just go at the end, like, you could just add this paragraph to the end of the Stony's.
Could I offer something that I'm ready to read it so that we pick up right where your cursor is? They say, we further recommend the city work with blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Cut out the friendly amendment part and just make it all one chunk. Does that make sense?
We all on the same page?
Yeah.
Everybody good? Everybody good? John?
There's a comma that we need to not,
Go ahead.
just request funding, comma, property, and or, right? Wasn't that?
Well, no, actually, what I intentionally put the comma, funding, property, and or materials. So it was like we could get trailers, chickens, whatever we gotta get, so it's the funding.
And the property.
And property and or materials.
Right,
So
but I just wanted, because the way to read without a comma, it would be funding the property, request funding the property.
I neglected to put in the comments.
Yeah.
It's just that. And then I did the
Comments?
other.
I had a comma.
Okay.
Yeah.
15 seconds. 20 seconds. That's better.
I got a number of points, but I find it, I'm a little surprised here we are in January roughly, and everybody's talking about land and parcels, and nobody, I'm not taking a criticism of the committee, but maybe this wasn't their charter, but nobody's really reached out, from what I understand, to private owners or or even real estate agents on what are some alternative lands. I myself have done that about half a dozen times. We've identified a place on Du Bois Street, identified a place on River Street. I've identified a place that's not in the city. And when I talk to them, when I talk to agents or land property owners, I always preface it with, don't punch me, but would you consider a type of transitional homeless encampment? And probably more often than not, I get, oh, fuck no, I don't want a bunch of needles. Watch your language. I'm sorry, I'm letting you know what I do.
I got it.
So it would be, I'd like to see some more proactive work on the part of the CACH in terms of, actually, before we talk about funding, you talk about funding and so forth, go out and see if there's anybody who actually won't even entertain this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. The question has been called for, and unless there is objection, I will deem the motion carried by unanimous consent. No objection, none such shall be ordered. We are going to, in order, again, to move forward, we'll move backwards a little bit. We'll move back to item Roman numeral 3, which is this is the item that was tabled concerning membership and bylaw revision, and we wanted to wait so Ms. Roach had an opportunity to arrive. Where we are at on this, to reset it, is that the body has declared, there is a vacancy declared due to unexcused absences by Mr. Sanchez. The secondary question, or second question here is, Ms. Roach, the records show that you, by virtue of the November 5th, November 19th, December 3rd, unexcused absences, and the bylaws would allow a vacancy to be declared, but out of abundance of courtesy, the body wanted to discuss with you your desire to remain on the CACH or not, so wondering what your desire is in that regard.
Continue with the CACH and make commitment. The reason I didn't come for this one meetings is because I just feel like we weren't getting anywhere at all.
Okay.
Nothing was being accomplished. And the one meeting that, the last meeting I did not attend, was the one where you guys were voting on opening up to the non-muslim bathrooms, and that was something that I really was feeling really passionate about, is opening up those bathrooms. And then you guys were leaving without my presence here, and I thought that was kind of done on purpose because I wasn't here, because I was for opening the bathrooms. But other than that, I'm okay. I think I'll continue.
So the body has to decide whether you want to declare a vacancy or not. If you don't do anything, I guess you won't. But you do have the bylaw issue here to deal with. Vacant, under your bylaws, a vacancy has now occurred. It's up to you to decide what you want to do.
Declare a vacancy.
To declare a vacancy.
For Frank.
Oh, that's already been done.
Oh, that's
already been done.
Okay.
This is regarding Ms. Roach's seat on the CACH.
Question.
Dwayne.
How many meetings do we have left?
How many what?
Meetings do we have left until we?
February, March.
So that's.
I think there might be 3 meetings in
6 or 7. 6 or 7.
We've got 3 weeks.
Plus subcommittee.
Sure.
And I deal with this on other committees too, this excused and unexcused thing. I think that, and I've seen and noticed this about, I've said this in conversation, trying to get people who are experiencing homelessness to be able to sit through these super long, annoying, complicated things and seem like they're going nowhere when they're having all sorts of trauma and having to deal with housing and so many things. I think giving some space to that, it's not very easy. So for me, I'm kind of glad that she's back and not that much longer, but she is a voice, and I appreciate it.
Brooke?
Yeah, I'm also glad that you're back, Sina, and yeah, I appreciate the frustrations that you felt. I've certainly had them myself. I can speak for myself, and I think the rest of the committee. There certainly was no intent on making that vote that day because you were not there.
It just was really convenient. Real convenient.
Well, I think I was gonna, I don't recall, but it's certainly, I mean, in my mind and in my voting, it was like, yay, Stina's not here, we can make this vote. I always wanted your participation and contribution to the discussion, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Don?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that if no one's going to make a motion to declare a seat vacant, which I certainly am not going to make because I want her to stay, let's move on that question.
I will say this, and by way I will say this, I don't want to qualify it. The body has one set of rules. If you want to have more than one set of rules, that's your discretion. You have one set of rules. If people are not going to make it, it's their obligation to say that they're not going to make it so that it's an excused absence. We don't have to go through this again. There's no mystery what the schedule is. We meet on the Tuesdays of the council meeting. The council doesn't meet. It's not a mystery what time we meet. Not a mystery what the subject matter is going to be. So I would ask all members, if you're not going to be here, advise Megan that you're not going to be here. You'll have an excused absence. We're now moving on.
Excuse me.
I would like to make a comment
Yeah.
No, not yet.
on this agenda
No,
item.
not yet. Yes.
Respectfully,
Respectfully.
there's a huge amount of bias in what you just said on the difficulty of a homeless person. Even just that fact of knowing calling makes it excused versus unexcused. It's an assumption of knowledge that somebody who's never done this might not know. When we had those bylaw conversations, I did say, hey, what about one of our homeless people who doesn't come to meetings? And we actually had a conversation, one of the co-chairs is going to have a conversation and decide whether they leave. Somehow it didn't show up in the bylaws, but that is what we sort of decided.
Well, it's not what we decided, because that's not in the bylaws. I'm not trying to be argumentative about it. I'm simply saying that I get pressure from everybody on this body to do all kinds of things. And I have to reference what the rules are. You made the rules. Those are the rules. I'm not trying to lecture someone. I'm saying to all of you, however it is you do it, if you're not going to be here, please let somebody know. Please let the staff know. If you don't have a phone, you don't have a phone. There must be other ways to reach these folks.
Do I have a bat signal?
Or, excuse me?
Sorry, no offense. Do I have a bat signal? I was just joking.
I just
Bat
didn't.
signal. Bat message.
Back signal.
That's your call. We're moving on. We're moving on.
Okay, so, on the same agenda item?
No. This is
Okay,
matter
so,
before the body. No, Keith, it's a matter before the body. We've already.
Yeah, you have public comment on each agenda item. You're just having an agenda item. I
Go ahead,
to
Keith.
say
Go
on the
ahead.
agenda.
Go ahead.
Okay. One, what Serge just said is completely accurate. And it's no wonder that, wait a minute, and there's no wonder, so.
I think as a body, we're deciding not. We want to keep it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to make a point here. The description that you presented about calling in and all that, is just like Serge says, it's not always easy for people on the streets to do that for many reasons. And for Frank, no wonder he didn't come back, because when he went to 1220 after a CACH meeting from here, he was not allowed into 1220 River Street. He could not get his belongings. And how, as a person living outside, somebody should have offered to drive him to 1220 so he could get in his sleeping bag in his tent after working hard here. And so no wonder he doesn't want to be here. You know, it's incredible.
Thank you.
You know?
Thank you.
So there's a total lack of understanding of the reality of people living on the streets in this community here. And it's to be an advisory group that does not understand even the most fundamental issues of being a homeless person, which is expressed over and over again by the comments that are made at these meetings week after week after week, is no wonder. It's all about getting money into your nonprofit
I
group.
completely resent that statement. Anyone else? I said I completely resent that statement.
Sure, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Sorry. We can move on. I do want to say, in hearing this, Stina said that she was frustrated. I think she was pissed off and didn't call me and have an excused absence. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe she did have the ability to call, but I would rather presume that she was pissed and just had an unexcused absence and we're moving on and not can cancel it.
Anybody else?
I concur with that.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on. We're on Roman numeral 5, summary of the CACH presentation of the January 11th Wise Democracy event. There is
Sorry, I
been
have a question.
your question is.
Now it's me. So, it's my understanding there is a vacancy on this committee. I was gonna say, I believed there to be two, but if not two, I know for positive there's one, which was Frank. So now that we've had this discussion about this open vacancy, what are we gonna do about it? Because it seems to me we're just passing over that.
Do you have something?
No, yeah, I'm just, yeah.
Excuse me, address the body. Do you have something you want to do on this? Would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
Yay.
Can I just do it? I would like to fill the vacancy that's on this board, and I would like to discuss at the meeting right before Christmas, there was discussion about adding another member to the committee outside of the vacancy that's now in existence because Frank is gone. And I was like, oh, table it, and then, I can't read your name or remember, Candace, was like, okay, that's what however that process worked, it got tabled. So now, we just had this discussion, so let's do something with it, so.
Okay, is that your motion? What is your motion then? What would you like to do? You want to do something?
I would like to fill the two vacancies on this committee, and if somebody, and if there are people here tonight, or I don't know. I know that Evan, I know that I read Evan's application in an email that was sent out. I don't know if there's anybody like,
Let me try to.
Help me out.
Let me try to set this, yeah.
Thank you.
No, I didn't know what you were going to do, so I couldn't help you until now. So here's a way to look at this in terms of membership. As we talked about earlier tonight, the council gave a vague or confusing or possibly conflicting direction to you on this. I'm interpreting that with regard to the one additional position that you requested during your first appearance before the City Council. The City Council has essentially said, yes, you decide. What they want to hear from you is two things. One, what category you are filling and who you are filling that with, and forward to that to them, and they'll make a decision whether or not to ratify that. Secondly, you have a vacancy this evening that was declared earlier for Mr. Sanchez's seat. You can decide whether you want to fill that tonight or whether you want to fill that in 2 weeks' time, so that the declaration of a vacancy will give other folks an opportunity to make recommendations. You could also decide, it's within your bylaw authority, I believe, to fill that vacancy tonight, if you wish to. So, one, you fill it, categorized, but not tonight, and that goes to City Council. The other one you can choose, which is to say Frank's. You can fill it now or later. It's your call, how you want to do that. Aaron?
Candace, do we have any updates from you guys as co-chairs about potential applicants to fill Frank's spot?
No, nothing new.
There is an existing list, and the City Council, that was one of the things we're sort of seeking from them, was some guidance on whether they wanted you to work off an existing list or not. I think that's one of the areas that's a bit vague. Megan?
I have gotten correspondence from various people asking about the opening and interest in it, and I responded in one case today, apparently out of ignorance, because I thought the understanding was today would be deciding how you would go about filling, if you're going to fill it, and how you would go about filling it. So I told them that tonight would be deciding how you go about. So I have had a couple of people reach out to me, one of whom was an original applicant. So there's that.
Can you tell us who that was?
Yes, Steve Fleischer. And then we've had a couple other people who have shown interest who are not original applicants, and I've told them that we don't know yet if we are taking new applications. So I've kind of put people in a hover mode.
So I'm going to go in the order in which I saw hands up. I saw Serge, and then I saw Dwayne, and then I saw Scott.
I would make a motion for Evan Morrison for Frank's spot, because we already have a few people experiencing homelessness. And I do not have another person, so that's all, just that one.
I'll offer a second.
Motion and a second.
Third.
Motion and a second. There is debate or discussion on this item.
It's supposed to be a homeless person on that position.
There's two, at least two on the committee already.
Yeah, I mean, but Frank's position is specifically designated as a homeless position, so you'll need to have.
Okay, so
Yeah, so just to clarify.
No, wait, here, but we really can't turn this into, like we're hanging around just having fun. We got to follow a process here. I can't give you the courtesy of the floor if 4 people are already speaking.
But is that not true?
So, Keith, we're not going to engage in a dialogue on this. I can't run a meeting that way. If everybody decides to stand up and ask me questions without being recognized, if you think it's slow now, that won't work either. There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this? Yes.
I have reviewed basically all of the original applications for the CACH, and I would concur that Evan Morrison, I would support his nomination. Of the people who have applied to the CACH, I think he would be a good fit for this spot.
Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, and without objection, the motion will be deemed approved by consensus. Is there anyone who wishes to cast a no vote in that regard? Seeing and hearing none, the appointment is made. Sir, would you like to come up and join the body? Good evening. How about we begin this way?
You got a clock.
How about we begin this way? Welcome.
And I said this a bunch of times.
Excuse me.
Didn't respond.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Excuse me, people are dying outside. Let's get busy.
Evan, I'm sorry, I don't have a.
You ready? Would you be kind enough to take such time as you need, a couple of minutes hopefully, not half an hour, but that gives an idea of who you are, what your interest is here?
Yeah, so I'm Evan Morrison. For a living, I run the emergency shelter at Housing Matters, 150 Coral Street. I also manage the Santa Cruz Free Guide. And I have been facilitating conversations to end homelessness, if you've heard of those, that have been happening in this building. Also, I'm a homeowner in this county. I am a landlord, I have one tenant, and I'm a husband and a father of 2 little girls. My 6-year-old likes to paint my nails.
That is wonderful.
One of these things is not true, guess which one?
I think that's a good summary of who I am.
Well, congratulations for being elected to the body and appointed to the body, by the membership, and welcome. Let me make sure that we are dispensing with this item in its entirety. We are going to wait until the next meeting to deal with the other appointment. Everybody good with that? Good with that, so everybody knows it's available. Don?
This is not the appointment, it's another piece, which I think would be useful to just check what we want to do is, the body has gotten a little smaller even with the addition of Evan, so we've set a quorum based on our full membership. Now we're a smaller number. Do we want to set our quorum at 8 rather than 9 just to recognize the reduced size?
We're currently at the same number.
Oh, we are back to the Zoom. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll take it back.
All right. And the direction of the staff is to essentially notice the vacancy and so on, applications will come in, people can nominate and so on, and next week, next meeting rather, you would take some action. You good with that?
Just
Go
for
ahead.
point of clarification.
Yes.
The council was concerned about making sure that the stakeholder groups were represented.
Yes.
So is it put upon the staff to make sure that we choose a stakeholder realm and send out a notice that some people who fit that stakeholder realm? Or is that something the body wants to approve each stakeholder?
Do you have guidance you would like to provide staff on that at this time?
He could be a landlord.
Ally? No, it's, yeah, so Ally?
I'm not sure if I just understood the dialogue that happened right there, but, so in between this meeting and the next meeting, applications are going to come in. Didn't the council say we had to choose from existing, but that would be kind of blackballing myself, right? But,
Yeah, but you've abandoned that from time to time.
So, our application's going to come in, and then, like, we'll see them in emails, and so at our next meeting, we will have the list of people that are prospective possibilities, and then we would vote at the next meeting. Is that the dialogue that just happened up there?
I'm really asking, I'm putting out various options to try to find out what we want to do. Otherwise, we'll spend a whole bunch of time at the next meeting saying we didn't provide enough guidance on what we wanted to do. So I'm asking for your guidance. The council wants you to say what, they didn't say fill every category, they said what category are you filling? Yes.
I think it's a bit unrealistic to have an entire application round and nominations by the next meeting. It is within the realm of possibility to go back through and see which stakeholder groups are currently represented, find the holes, go back into the applications, original applications, and find who fit those needs and present those at the next meeting.
How's that sound, folks? People okay with that? Anybody have an objection to that? I can see hands are up, so we'll go Stoney, then Dwayne, then Sir. Yes.
I would just like to ensure that we have this as an agenda item so we can deal with it and get it done.
Will do, absolutely. Dwayne.
My only concern is that we're running out of time in terms of the work we want to do, so I have concerns about bringing somebody on new. I think the day to do that, the last possibility, in my opinion, was 2 days. I think we're just we're out of time, so if we're going to add somebody else, we're going to bring them up to speed. I just think our time would be better spent just finishing what we started. I'm thankful he's here tonight in order to like move right into the spot, but I think beyond this date, I just think I don't know how useful it would be.
Serge?
He's been here most of them, almost all of them. He is interested. So I hear that about not wanting to take the time to get someone up to speed, but there are some people who have been through the process a bit. But I would not want somebody who would need a lot of supportive time. That's not. And the other interesting one was Todd, the guy who was the UN. He actually did an application way early on. Those were the most interesting ones to me. So I think that somebody should be allowed to do an application, but we would grade it as it better be somebody who can not need.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah, that.
Ally?
Well, I've heard talk of possibilities of extending this to go longer, and homelessness never ends. So, you know, if there is the possibility that this body continues after the 3 or couple of months that are left, and I don't think that there's any, what is there really to bring them up to speed to? Not a whole lot, you jump in and here you go, so.
Well, I think with regards to the subcommittee and attending the meetings, there's lots. They've missed out on a lot if they haven't been attending on a regular basis. There absolutely is.
Don?
Yeah, just two quick things. One about what the last thing Ali said, which is correct, that there may be some future for a homelessness committee, but I think it will have to be reconstituted because a lot of people signed on to this thinking it was a 7-month gig.
Right.
And then so at that point, it will sort of have to not start over, but kind of refresh.
Which is understandable, and then
So-
to carry on if somebody was to come in right now and the body reconvenes, then they're not starting over, they're
Right.
coming in at this
Right.
point and.
So that, but I just want to make sure that was clear. The other piece, though, for me personally, is I'm pretty much with Wayne. It's like, I just don't want to spend any more time talking about new members. Not because there wouldn't be some value in it, but we have so much left to do in 6 meetings. And I just want us to like, stop talking about a lot of other things and start talking about our recommendations to the city council.
Can you make a motion?
Yes, you can make a motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to amend the bylaws to allow us to not fill vacant positions for the remainder of the committee's tenure.
There's a motion. Is there a
And-
second? Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, minor.
And to change the quorum to, I don't know, like one more than a simple majority.
If I understand the arithmetic on that, that would move it to 8. One more than a simple one. You have 13, that would be 7 would be your number. 8 would be the new number to establish a quorum. So that everybody understands.
And then
We would put that in
people,
motion.
if there are less people, then it will decrease by 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will be, your desire is to amend the bylaws so that a quorum is one more than a simple majority
Yes,
of the appointed members,
yes.
however many you may.
Or can we say of the current members?
The current, sure.
The
yeah,
current membership at any given point, that current membership, one more than a simple majority. In your current situation, that would be 8 instead of 9. Correct? Megan? Yeah, right.
Yes, current 13.
With the new,
Yes,
member.
13 now is Amy, because Amy is still on.
Yes.
13 current. So
Vacant
majority-
positions, sorry, I added that.
okay?
Vacant position.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the motion. Is there a second?
Boom.
There are multiple seconds under debate or discussion. Sir.
I would like to suggest as a point of order that we reference changing the bylaws to Roman numeral 3, Article 3, parens E. Is it
Roman numeral, what is it, sorry?
Roman numeral 3, Article 3, in the bylaws, and it's parens E is amended. So you're going to amend the bylaws.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Sam. Good. Rob?
I think I'll support this motion, but I just wanted to caution that as we're losing potentially Amy and others, that it might be hard for us to function as a body without adding members.
It would be my understanding that if the motion passes, that would not in
Well,
some way.
it-
But if you then start diminishing, yeah, understood. Okay.
Which is what,
Let me, sir.
I was just going to say, I believe the way we're writing it, we're just allowed to not fill them. We can still fill them.
right.
Anybody else?
And just a
Wayne?
comment about that is that, I think Sir brought up a great point, and that is there are some qualified people that we want to have access to. And I don't think that this stops that in any way. They certainly can come and present and meet with subcommittee members, et cetera, because I think the gentleman from the UN, I don't remember his name, yeah, I think he has a lot of experience to offer, and I think we can learn a lot from him. But he doesn't necessarily need to be a member to do that. We can have access to him. I'm sure he's happy to help.
Let me ask you, please go ahead.
Clarifying question. In
Yep.
the quorum thing in the bylaws, it separates the number needed for Brown Act versus quorum. Doesn't quorum define what would be the Brown Act?
I believe so. I think they're, about this, let me make sure I think I'm not, thank you for raising this. So if the motion passes, the Brown Act refers also to a majority. That's what they need, irrespective of the number we put in there. So if the motion passes, we would ask staff to make the corresponding corrections in.
Yes.
Okay.
Subnote, if you care, and we've been ignoring, we've been not following the subcommittee bylaws, I don't really care, so I'm not mentioning that. For me, I just have a stress of we have so few people on our committees that getting stuff done. To say we're not gonna take somebody who is here all the time or something like that, like this is hard. Even for those of us who have a lot of time, like, we're running around a lot.
Very good. For Aaron.
My question related to you, and I'm not sure, I don't know your name, and brought you up. Did you submit an application to the CACH originally?
I did not, because I didn't think I could, given the other amendments I had, I didn't think I would be able to attend every meeting, kind of fashion. But thanks for the segue, because I'm here to, well, Megan kind of answered my question about what the process is for applying, I think. But I want to just say that I find it really disheartening that here's a committee on homelessness, and the solution to homelessness is homes, and there's not one landlord.
Yes, there is.
We need one more.
Well, with a large, should I say a large the landlord with a number of units, that in my case, what I would do is I just want to offer my candidacy. I have 53 units in Santa Cruz City alone, of which 28 are Section 8. And I want to be known as one of the largest Section 8 landlords in Santa Cruz. I have brought homeless folks off the street, several with FASH vouchers. I've made people homeless. Well, they blame me for making them homeless. I have a lot of 30 years experience as a landlord in Santa Cruz. I understand the housing dynamic. I understand some of the challenges lower income folks certainly have. I have apartments in 4 counties. I do Section 8 in a number of counties. I just think that I don't see how we can have a viable discussion of homelessness and applying funding solutions without a landlord with a number of, as involved I am with the Section 8 community, because that is one of the easiest paths, if you will, from going from homelessness into housing. Anyway, so that's why that's one reason.
Thank you.
So where we are is, but thank you very much for that. I'll just add on a personal note, thank you for taking Section 8. Thank you very much for that. I think where we're at right now is we have a motion to change the bylaws in such a way that a quorum will be considered one more than a majority of those serving on the body. Does everybody think that's what we're doing? Okay.
And to allow us to not fill vacant positions.
Okay. Okay, very good.
As long as we have 8 show up, it's a 2/3 vote.
Just say it again.
It's still a 2/3 vote as long as
whatever.
more than 8 people.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Don?
So this may be a separate action after the vote on this. If this passes, it just says we might not fill another vacancy. It doesn't say we won't. We may or may not. So we haven't really addressed for Megan, like what her job is going forward, or what our job is about considering future applicants. So I just want to make sure we answer that question.
That'll be the next thing. Okay. Got that teed up. Further? Without objection, the motion passes by unanimous consent. Does anyone wish to object? Seeing and hearing none,
I'm just saying that I'm okay with going forward, but I'd rather it not be, whatever that phrase is.
Got it. The motion passes by unanimous consent. Now, I would draw your attention to the need then to deal with the other vacancy question, which is to give you some direction with regard to agendizing the item for next week.
I suppose the first
You
question
go.
is there still a desire to fill an additional?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So, if you have such a desire, it would be at our next meeting, or your next meeting. The direction to Megan would be to place it on the agenda for action, of which no action is still an action, but you can choose to do that. Number 3, that staff will review the current composition of CACH, look at categorical, the categories for the CACH. We'll then look at those applicants who submitted applications timely and match the vacant positions to folks with apparently the qualifications to fill that. Is that correct?
And well, I will reach out to them to see if they're still interested.
And you would contact those folks and make sure they're still interested, and so on, before you would bring them forward. Is that the process you would like to follow with regard to filling the vacancy?
I'm just confused, because I do want to know, but I thought we just voted it. Whoa.
I'm sorry, you thought you just voted?
Wasn't the, please.
And I just, all we said was that we're not obligated to fill it. And that's the way that reads. It allows the CACH not to fill it. It doesn't say the CACH may not fill it.
Thank you. Could people who did not originally apply, but somebody might apply, consider it as well, because he's put a lot of time in it.
Let's have yes, please.
Can I
Madam
offer
Co-Chair.
potentially, if when you look at the categories and you reach out to people to kind of find folks who meet those categories, if there are none from the original list who are interested, that we then consider people who have been attending the meetings regularly as applicants. Does that fit?
Let me try to reword that just a little bit. Megan, as staff of this body, do you believe that the council, at any action that they've taken, have limited the CACH's search for additional members to only those folks who submitted timely applications way back in the day when we started this? Do you believe the council has restricted the CACH's ability to only that pool of applicants, or could the CACH accept others who may be interested who hear it word of mouth or whatever it might be?
I believe the council primary was concerned about making sure that the stakeholders were represented.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this body has already gone outside of previous applicants. So that's already been done. The main concern from my standpoint is timing. If indeed, as Gwen was suggesting, this be done by the next meeting, doing a formal opening it up is unrealistic. Doing targeted outreach could be done. If people know of people, those names could be added, and they can get an application to make it quickly, but it's, to open it up, again, that's a lot of time.
Okay. So we're sitting here on Tuesday. Let me see, is anybody here, members of CACH, who believe you might know of a potentially a good candidate beyond the pool of applicants originally? Could you get them to submit an application before close of business this Friday? Is that so that Megan can stay tracking things? Sir?
What categories are we missing?
I was just looking up to see if I had that from the last time we presented, because we had an agenda for this, and I believe we had listed, but I think that's maybe you can find it in our packets. So we had that,
It's kind of downtown.
there we go, it's right here.
Here we go.
Affordable housing, employment recruiter, faith-based organization, non-profit sector, and violence prevention. Those were the holes, as it were, from the original stakeholder slot of the council.
So this doesn't include your experience, which fills some of those.
The gentleman may fit some of those.
Affordable housing, non-profit, if that's.
Possibly affordable housing, nonprofit.
Well, and the gentleman who is here this evening and expressed a desire, I would imagine interpreted broadly, affordable housing where somebody's providing lots of Section 8. I'm just trying to see how we might be able to.
Those like so many of us.
selection of.
Yeah, right.
I don't see that as the one.
Okay. Everybody okay? Stony?
You can find somebody from faith-based.
I'll just comment on it.
PFC.
Yeah, they just reached out to me today, actually asking about this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Rob.
I was just gonna say, I think as long as whoever the nomination is fits into any of these categories, I think that would, we're good.
Okay. So without objection and without a motion, if you're okay, we will request that staff agendize the item for next time, accept additional applications until close of business on Friday. A completed application needs to be two Megan by close of business on Friday, and the body will consider what to do at your next meeting. Will that work for everybody? Any objection? Okay. That's where we're going. All right. Thank you. Second order, CACH bylaws. Okay, we are now on Roman numeral 5, a summary by CACH participants of the January 11th Wise Democracy event.
Right.
Yeah, I'll be right with you. Just
But
one
it is
second.
about 4.
Say it again?
It is about item number 4. So it's the one before.
Oh, it's about the previous item.
Yeah. And I'm doing this about...
Go ahead.
Okay. So Barbara Bribb, a woman, had to leave early, and
Okay.
what she was trying to cite, and she couldn't find it, and then she found it, and she said, could I say it for her?
Okay.
So it's in the executive order, and it's 3C, and she wanted the CACH members to be particularly aware. 3C, the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, shall develop and share a model lease template to allow counties and cities to use Caltrans property adjacent to highways or state roads in those jurisdictions on a short-term emergency basis to provide shelter for individuals who are homeless. So it's that's the section she was trying to particularly draw to people's attention because it's kind of radical, but it's in their nuisance executive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So noted. So with regard to the Wise Democracy event, as I indicated to you earlier, I received a request from Amy via email to continue this to your next meeting so that she can provide her feedback on it. You may choose to do both. You may choose to get some information this evening, you can do that, and agendize it again next time you meet so Amy can provide her. That's your call.
I move to table.
Move to table. Motion to table.
Second.
Not debatable. And so I will move to a vote without objection. The motion to table will be adopted by unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Seeing and hearing none, such is the order.
Is that automatically re-agendized?
Yeah, re-agendize for next time. Let me ask you though, Don?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the way that's agendized next time is not just a report or a summary, but an add recommendations on that topic. I feel like we get caught up in this all the time. It happens at the city council especially, so I just don't want to, when that comes, that whatever that agenda title is, would make it clear that there might be an action on a recommendation.
The plan by the public engagement subcommittee was to tackle the motions related to that as part of their oral report. But I guess you're saying so the body can vote on it as in a different motion?
Well, that's fine, I didn't know that, so I'm happy. I just want to make sure we don't mis-agendize it so that we end up going, oh, we can't act on this tonight.
So in that regard, what I've tried to do as your presiding officer is to interpret the subcommittee reports as being eligible for motions. That when you report out, you don't have to have given us something in advance that says I'm going to make a motion. You can do that in the meeting itself. So we're good on that.
Great.
I want to do two things real quickly. One is, out of an abundance of courtesy, would you like to do literally 2 minutes and no more than 2 minutes, sort of just telling us what happened there?
Wasn't this table?
Yeah, I'm just trying to out of abundance of courtesy, but if she waited all night, she comes to all our meetings. Would you like to just do 2 quick minutes on it? Do 2 quick minutes, and then we'll go back to it on the meeting. That's one, give you the courtesy here.
I appreciate it, thank you. And maybe the most dramatic thing I could say is I'll say what it isn't. What we did was a dynamic facilitation where you pick people. And so it was community members who figured out an A-list and kind of said, if I could have my dream constellation of people in the room, this is the combo I'd put together, and then I dynamically facilitate them. And that's what happened that weekend. That's very different from a wisdom council where you draw random selection of citizens from the voter rolls and dynamically facilitate them. The distinction is that dynamic facilitation is the operating system of a wisdom council. So what we did was 2 4-hour sessions at the Anza Park Clubhouse with a selection of people that a quorum of Santa Cruz citizens said if we could get this bunch of people in the room, that's what we'd do.
So you got 1 more minute.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
I would say Mark Primack does a column in the Santa Cruz Sentinel, and he published something today, and it moved me to tears. And when he first stepped in, he didn't step in, he wasn't sure if he wanted to step in, and it was a risk for him to step in. And his report coming out there, I highly recommend that you read it, because it's from inside his skin and from an immersion experience of dynamic facilitation. It's an extraordinary model for shifting consciousness in very gnarly, thorny subjects. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's met twice since our last meeting, and we are essentially work planning in order to have to set this body up to potentially make recommendations to the city council regarding the camping ordinance at our next meeting. We have to have those a report written after our next meeting and get it on the city council agenda by February 25th. So to that end, we have scheduled a public engagement session for here in this building on the 29th. That's an open public meeting where the topic will be it'll be a conversation sort of answering where we get at the questions of how where can people go to camp in Santa Cruz essentially, and what models or what are the possibilities for having alternatives to a law enforcement approach to manage camping. Those are sort of the broad strokes of what this conversation will be about. And we're also having a non-public meeting with some other community stakeholders in business and nonprofit communities earlier that day as well. Just try to have, it'll just be different sort of tenor, but the same general topics, just to get different perspectives from different stakeholders.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the subcommittee? Brooke?
What time is that meeting on the 20th?
The public meeting is from 6 to 8 p.m. here at the VIII Hall.
Candace?
Thank you. So I have some questions, and then I also wanted to provide some additional information there. So with the meeting that's earlier in the day, we reached out to the Santa Cruz County Business Council, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Downtown Association, so that they could choose specific business owners or executive directors to participate in a facilitated discussion with members of the CACH for the first hour, and then for their second hour to come up with some language around what they do and do not support. And then my questions were for the meeting in the evening, what is the plan? Like, what does it look like? When people get there, what do they do? How are you going to guide that discussion?
We're still working out some of the specific details, and we could have had this conversation the meeting today. But similar style.
Yeah, I'm just asking because we're all here right now. So yeah, if it's similar to the way that we prioritize things in the last engagement
And it won't be so much sort of brainstorming like solutions or things like that. It'll be more talking about like feedback on ideas.
And if you want to hear it. So just as a reference to the executive order that the governor wrote, the interim report, they're not numbered in this thing. On my PDF, it's at page 30. It says, sweeps and criminalization have been shown not to work in this effort. Strategies that explicitly or implicitly encourage these actions will be unacceptable. So trying to talk about more of an outreach response to things instead of a PD response to things. So having a conversation with people of, this is what we see your needs are. Your needs are litter and trash and people yelling and people camping there all the time. If we could respond to those in an outreach social service way and set up something, in some conversations with the county on that kind of thing, what is your response? What more are your needs there? And the crime kind of things of stealing and stuff, that's a PD-ish thing. So then asking people, what other needs are there in this to get your needs met in this kind of system?
Okay, so it has a different focus than the business one. That it's not focused on the camping ordinance and safe sleeping, like emergency shelter programmatic elements. It's more broad than
The
that.
camping ordinance is what the governor and what other places say stop doing. It doesn't even work.
Right.
Trying to say, and there are a lot of counties in the Bay Area also that have outreach crisis management groups that go and do homeless or sobriety stuff, even towards the business community. If we set this up to take care of your needs, making sure nothing is like, we're not talking about poop in your doorway is okay, but we have different ways of dealing with things. Give us some input on if we're missing anything. Because we really want them to know we want needs met, but not in the way that the criminalization thing. Yes, so it'll be a conversation.
Yeah, I'm just wary about the way that this engagement happens, and I believe in you guys, and I do that we're not steering the public in a specific direction. And that if we're doing community engagement, we're listening to all the sides, because not all the sides agree with that.
And I'm sorry, you can listen and you can also educate.
You can.
Those
You
work
can.
together sort of well.
Even though I haven't been able to be in every one of the planning for this, I've been in it, and I think what I'm hoping, and I think we're moving in this direction, is to sort of sharpen the options. So it is true engagement, but we want to say that there's this way of doing something or this way of doing something, kind of lay that out and say which one works better for you, those who from the community who come to talk to us.
Okay.
Is that a fair assessment? It's not just a wide open, like, what do you think we should do kind of thing. Well, I'm just checking with my partners here to see if they heard that.
If people push it in a different direction, I'm cool with that. But a policeman in the middle of the night saying go to shelter, don't go to shelter, don't work.
I'm sorry, Don, your point was that it's not a super wide, like, you're gonna have some
Right,
problematic elements that you're.
Frankly, I'm a little bit, I think we're disagreeing a little bit here, and that's okay. I mean, what I'm saying is that I would frame it as we can do an outreach model that doesn't really focus at all on police officers and rangers to make contact with people who are sleeping outside. Or we can have a model that sort of where the police are sort of doing a law enforcement of laws and rules, which can kind of describe to the community, here's what that looks like, here's what that looks like, here's the limitations of that, here's the downsides of that. Now, having heard that, which would you think makes more sense for the city to pursue? And it doesn't preclude people like Serge and others making the point they're making, but it isn't just saying, this is what we're going to do. It's saying there's choices between one model and the other.
Others on this road.
This might be putting cart before the horse, but just want to encourage subcommittees and folks as they're thinking programmatically about these, whatever the outcomes are, in terms of coming up with a model and telling people, we're going to put people here, and there's going to be showers down the street or trash pickup or whatever it is that we're trying to align people with. To also think about RFP processes when we're making these recommendations. It's kind of a best practice and a way that we can cast a wide net to get different service providers and others engaged that may not be in this room or in this county necessarily. So that's all. People are moving forward with recommendations. I would like us to kind of formally start recommending those things to city council instead of just saying, we like this guy, let's give him money. We like these people, let's give them money. Just to be a little more formal.
Further from your subcommittee, Stunning?
Can I make just a quick observation based on my own life experience? That you are not going to incarcerate your way out of homelessness. That's the first one. We all accept that, I think, as a given. But I think that there's a misunderstanding of the law enforcement community that they want to go out and do this. And there are probably, like in any population, there's some folks that sort of savor being an enforcer. But I don't find that necessarily the norm in our community, either at the sheriff or the police department. Other people may have had a different experience. But what I want to comment on is that the idea of having community-based organizations that can be the first and maybe even the second point of contact with regard to this is a much better model. It is not a good dollar and cents. You just want to be pragmatic. Use the police as that first contact point. unless there's a serious case of violence or mental health or something like that. But I think the idea of finding another way of doing it is a much better way to do it. And I realize there's a whole contingent that wants to have a crackdown on violations of the law. And the way I've tried to characterize that for 50 years now is be careful what you wish for. Because as soon as it becomes personal, if you ask the police to crack down, and all of a sudden the house people's kids are getting arrested or stopped, guess how quickly that turns around. So I would not support any kind of a proposal that would involve the police being the first point of contact for people on the street. Upset. Thank you.
Further report from the subcommittee? Thank you for your, yes.
Sorry, it's a different issue. Right now, the police chief has 7 ordinances of his, and he's reaching out to community, Santa Cruz neighbors. One of them is on not allowing day camping. And to me, this is really hard for our committee to have a city staff member using city funds sort of supporting, I don't know, politicizing, trying to support something or get feedback and support for something contrary to what we're doing. I would support a motion to try to have the police chief try to work with us rather than do this separately. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
You're saying you're doing this unilaterally?
Yeah, I mean, that, like, we went to it, Ralph and I went to it, and he actually has 7 ordinances, and one is no needles on beaches or parks, another one was no day camping. And I was like, but why are you doing that when we're supposed to be talking about the camping ordinance? So for me, that's really challenging for trying to get community support, and he has the conservative voice here. He has a conservative here.
Further from your subcommittee? Next subcommittee?
So Public Health Subcommittee, we met a couple of times during our last meeting. Since the last report period, we were able to visit the Downtown Streets team at their meeting on Thursdays, this is January 9th, just to gain a better understanding of the needle pickups and that sort of thing. So they reported to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, they reported to us that last year was around 4,000 needles they picked up. This year, 5 months in, it's about 3,500 so far. So it's been a lot, and so they're predicting a lot more. I also spoke with Parks and Rec, and they picked up around, they report about the same number, similar numbers. So it's a lot, that's a lot of needles. So I took that back to our, we met with staff as well, and so one of the things that I guess I never really gave much thought to this part of it, the feedback from Downtown Street was the kiosks that are available are not being utilized, so location's an issue probably, but also just what it actually looks like when one's using is they don't necessarily are looking for a receptacle afterwards, right? So we talked a lot about using like small portable units, and then for them to hand those out and then maybe dump those into a larger sort of bolted down kiosk or something or whatever. So that we talked about a great deal about that. We also talked not to pass the buck to the safe sleeping subcommittee. It's really not bad. We talked about just the storage piece of what we've been doing, and it seems to us it really ties much more with what you're doing, and it would be sort of go with that. We'd be happy to help with that process, but it just seems so distant from what we're doing, the public health piece of it. When we do find a place for folks to stay, that having storage on that site just makes the most sense to us. So I'll just throw that out there. You guys can think about that. Several syringe kiosk sites were discussed at our meeting with staff and Parks and Rec. We talked about HPHB behind KP Center, CACH Permanente Center, and at the end of Golf Club Drive are some of the hot spots. The more the better, so we're hoping to get more sites possibly. When I went and spoke with the Downtown Streets, if you guys haven't been to one of those meetings, by the way, I recommend you go. They're a lot of fun, actually. The Downtown Streets, basically along the levee anywhere and underneath the bridges, those are hot spots. So that's something to keep in mind. We also talked about some of the Dignity on Wheels portable pilot shower and laundry facility locations. That's to be determined. We're having ongoing conversations with city staff about that. And then anything you want to add to that? I think we've covered everything. Yeah.
Porta potties.
Yeah. So in terms of locations, we're still ongoing discussions with staff about where those are going to end up specifically. So that's where we are with that. We actually have a couple of motions that we'd like to add tonight. I don't know if you're able to open that up. Okay. I'll see if it's correct. So propose that Santa Cruz City Council allocate monies $9,100 in order to fund a 3-month one-time per week pilot shower/laundry program with Dignity on Wheels to approximately take place from April 1st to June 30th, 2020, and the location to be determined.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second under discussion. Would you like to elaborate first, and then we'll go here?
I don't think I need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir.
One of the things that's really great about their program, they said that they have case management. They sit and talk to folks. If those people aren't going to know our community at all, is there anything within reaching out to them to get them to learn stuff about the specifics of our community?
Yeah, so Marcus has very explicitly expressed an interest in meeting with local organizations and connecting in a multidisciplinary way. So I think once we were able to commit, they would make those overtures, and whenever you guys recommend it, could be connected with them.
And would that be within 3 weeks, or that would be set up beforehand so that those 3 months?
This is a 3-month pilot.
Yeah.
Yes, so presumably it would be set up beforehand.
Okay.
So I mean, the dates are an approximation. The proposal is for 3 months.
Yeah, I support it as long as they're getting a robust introduction to different departments and stuff within the county.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have your input on that.
Does this budget include staff to have the shower facilities fully operational every week?
All inclusive.
All inclusive, yeah.
Yeah, but
What are we hoping to find out by doing this?
To get a better understanding of need. The idea is that we don't want to, the city doesn't have a lot of money just to throw at something like this. So the idea, the long-term sort of idea is that maybe we could have something more permanent at some point. So this is a start. Like everything has a start. That's why it's really a pilot program. So we can gather that information. So to see how that works and see if people are actually willing to utilize it. We, typically, like, as you know, I'm sure we don't want to throw a lot of money at something that nobody's going to use. Yeah. So this is going to give us that information, hopefully. That's the goal. Okay. One of the goals. Cool. Sure. And the obvious goal is that we want people to have access to these facilities just like anybody else would.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, the first canvas, then
Similar
canvas.
page. So in thinking about the typical way that cities go about contracting with service providers, there's an RFP process. And so I'm wondering if there's a way that we can amend this language so that if there are other organizations that also provide the same services, that they could also apply, and then council would, or staff would choose the most appropriate candidate.
We haven't found anyone who's willing to come to this county who has this service, but we have not done official RFP, so, right.
You don't have to do an RFP, they do single contractors all the time. Any department can do an authorization for that. Human Services does it once in a while, Health Services does it all the time, just to say it's a pretty specific thing. And to move on something quickly, most do.
I don't mean to reprimand, I simply mean to remind. I had said that Brooke would be the next person to speak. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand, and I will be pleased to recognize you in the order in which you have raised your hand. Brooke.
Thank you. I agree with all of those things, but I really don't like the practice of we're going to reach out to this one person, or we asked a few different people. Cities do this all the time, counties do this all the time. There can be an RFP process. We can have a very short turnaround time on the window and put it into Dignity on Wheels and whomever else we think may be interested. But I just think it's the fair and appropriate thing to do, and that way we can put the caveats in that we want, such as, you know, must know X amount for case management with whomever's driving the vehicle. Maybe there are providers in the area who aren't able to do that, but, you know, we could get it done pretty quickly and still have an RFP process.
Stone.
Could I make a friendly amendment to strike the part where you're saying Dignity on Wheels and say an appropriate vendor or a service provider?
Or we write that, with that, generally speaking, is that agreeable to make her the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could supplement that.
I'm sorry?
If I could supplement that by saying, my recall is that anything under $10,000 doesn't require an RFP. But that way we have a particular vendor on the leaves of open.
Yeah, we're good. Does that look like what you're looking for? Is that agreeable to everybody? Or making the motion anyway?
Works for me.
Okay. Brooke, then Serge, Brooke.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment that we make this an RFP for a vendor. Just to put, the city puts out an RFP for this pilot program.
Yeah, I'm absolutely okay with that. The sooner, I mean, if you're saying it's not going to, in your opinion, if you think it's not going to slow the process up, then
I mean,
that's your experience then.
a contract isn't going to get signed tomorrow,
Right.
but in 2 weeks, you know. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If that's agreeable.
Does staff have the time to write up the whole RFP, put out the application, read the application? Like, that's a big process that we just handed to somebody.
It's also very unclear if going to be done until the council says we can do it, so we have time to prepare for it.
So, did everybody hear that? So the answer was that you're making a recommendation to the council. If the council acts on it favorably, they'll direct somebody in the, grand scheme of things to multiply words on paper and get the RFP out and so on. That's not necessarily making Megan do all the context.
Yeah, I just don't think it's going to be April to June anymore. Maybe in the fall by the time those things happen. Once all those things come together, just putting that out there on the timeline.
I completely agree.
An RFP.
We would like this done as soon as
I
possible.
think an RFP could be the continuation after the 3 months, once we learned a few things, but I'm not really seeing that an RFP is necessary for such a small contract.
Brooke?
Having responded to RFPs with a quick turnaround with the city and sitting on commissions that have also put out RFPs with a quick turnaround in the city, it can be done.
Thank you. Stony.
The observation I'd make is that you're going to need a contract no matter what you do. So there's going to be a lag time on that. As Fred's explaining, you're going to go to the council, they're going to either approve it or not approve it. And based on that, they're going to direct staff to do what they're going to do. So it's going to take time no matter how you cut it. So an RFP anyway is going to be boilerplate.
Okay. Don?
I'm going to give it next. I think maybe we can dodge this, but I mean in a useful way by just not dealing with the wording RFP and that we propose that the city council seek a vendor and allocate monies in order to implement a 3-month pilot shower program. And the reason I'm saying that is that there's even halfway between an RFP and no RFP processes the city do, where they do kind of a informal solicitation of bids, which I've been a part of, and that can go a little bit faster, but it doesn't, in a way, I just don't know that it really matters that I'm not sure that's what matters to us, is which way this is done. If our mission is to get a pilot program of showers somewhere in the community to see how that works, if it was downtown or whatever. And I feel like whatever our recommendation on whether it's an RFP or not isn't probably going to be the main question for the city council to deal with when they get this recommendation. They're going to say, do we want to do this or not?
Aaron?
I think our intent is simply to have this be as specific and well-researched as possible so it could be acted on as quickly as possible, because this has been an emergent kind of need that was identified from the beginning of the CACH being here. And so, I mean, I don't know procedurally what is most correct, but this is a well-recognized vendor within the community that has contracts with surrounding counties. And I don't think there's like a multitude of other, when we sort of asked and looked online, I don't think that there are a lot of other competing vendors who can offer a comparable professional multidisciplinary service. So that was our intention in making the recommendation, was to make it as, kind of actionable as quickly as possible.
Further debate or discussion?
Just one last, where would it?
So we have a potential idea of the site in mind, but we're not ready to talk about it publicly yet. But downtown, in the downtown area is what we have, and we should actually, I should have put this in earlier, we should really actually add like in the downtown area, because we have identified that as a high need area. And at some distance actually from Housing Matters, because they have showers there, so we talked about being more on that side of town.
Yeah. So you have the language in mind? Maker of the motion. Maker of the motion. Maker of the motion. Is this the motion we want to work on?
Yeah.
So further? Yes.
Which friendly amendment are you talking about?
Her, I guess.
So to say seek a vendor and allocate monies.
And yeah, we could talk about that. Sorry, somebody was just commenting about not to exceed $10,000, the wording was something like that. The reason I came up with I didn't come up with $9,100. That particular vendor did. That was the quote given to us. So that's why we wanted to be as specific as possible.
As it currently reads, is that what you're comfortable with?
Right, but I think you should probably delete 9,100 if we're opening it to all vendors, because it might be 9,200.
Right. Did you say not to exceed $10,000?
I don't know, I mean, maybe there's some other vendor that's gonna say 12,000 and that's the way it goes. I don't know.
And the number of hours per day, you want to add that?
I don't know that we have, I don't remember what you said about that, 4 hours or 6 or something like that.
Just generally speaking, I might encourage you to adopt a motion which captures the essence of what you want to do. The city will then follow a policy process for putting out RFPs and vendors. My sense is you should say, what is it you want, starting when, not to exceed how much money.
Yeah,
that's kind of it.
So it's a staffed rural power unit that basically brings their own water and disposes of their own waste and has a social work case management component and provides their own supplies. I mean, I don't know how ridiculous to get.
No.
It's like,
That's just fine.
this is undoing all of, we have done.
Brooke.
Sorry. If we're not going to have RFP, you might as well leave dignity on wheels. My whole thing is about the RFP process. So seek a vendor is kind of saying the same thing. My point is, instead of doing we deem you the vendor, we think we have an unmet need and we can't figure out who else to go to, so we're just gonna pick someone. The RFP process is kind of the thrust of where I'm going. So that's not moving forward, go back to the original.
I completely agree with, I mean, I completely understand where Brooke is coming from. I guess I just view this more as like an emergency mode thing, of like just trying to do something on a pilot basis.
I'm wondering if we can split the difference and propose that they go with Living on Wheels for 3 months, during which an RFP process can be done, and then during that 3-month process, we go into a full RFP. And if someone else comes back with a better option in that 3 month, then you switch vendors.
Okay, so here is your motion. This is the motion. I'm going to ask if there is further debate or discussion on this motion. Seeing and hearing none. All debate having ceased. Dwayne, you raised an index finger, so.
I just think I want a dollar amount in there.
Want it not to exceed
Not to exceed $10,000.
Put double what you think is gonna be.
And there's gonna be a report, and like, there's gonna be more written to this to explain it to city council.
Yeah, okay. This motion,
Well, maybe.
this motion,
It'll be related to digging on wheels, I'm like.
on this motion, all debate having ceased, looking for eyebrows raised, fingers raised politely. Without objection, the motion will be adopted by unanimous consent. See, the vote will be recorded as whatever number of members are present with 1 no vote. So it's not by unanimous consent, but we will record the vote. Anyone else wish to be recorded as a no vote? Okay, very good. Motion passes and so ordered. We have one more subcommittee to hear from. I'm sorry.
I'm still, we have another motion. Where were we? I haven't said it yet.
I see, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, there it is, sorry, I gave it to you.
Are you on the $2,500?
Yep.
Okay, please open on that.
This is going to solicit the same exact type of feedback.
No, to launder their towels. Maybe I should put that in there, but, we want to support an existing program that's out there, and we want the city to support that program, and to sort of put some skin in the game, you know? And in return, the hope is that we can get some data from them, where folks are using the showers, where they're not, that sort of thing. Because it's as we've talked about this particular mobile unit in the past, and so they're moving around from location to location, and some of those locations are still to be determined. But the idea is that we want to support that program, and this is the help that they need. They need somebody to launder the towels that they provide for folks.
There's your motion. Is there debate, or is there a second on that motion? Do we have a second? We have a second, debate or discussion? Serge?
They said they need money on the towels specifically.
Yeah, these are the conversations that we've been having to launder those towels. They have towels, but they don't have a facility to use those towels. So we want to, our idea is to work with city staff and to have the city help them out and with the cleaning of those towels. So that's an issue for them.
Yeah, because I like those guys and stuff. The towels, there were 2 things. One, they got heat money to get the trailer, but normally when they take the trailer somewhere, they say that group has to manage the trailer and take care of the shower. They normally wash the towels, like each one of the churches when they do it.
That's not what,
it's not the way
in the meetings that I've had with John, that's not what's been communicated. This is the one area that I asked, where do you need help from the city?
Okay. Kevin, is there a time period attached to this? Is this for a month or a year or?
I
a starting point.
Yeah, it's a starting point, because I just don't know how many all the specific stuff has not been, to be fair, it hasn't been worked out. How many towels, that kind of thing. Because they are still trying to find siting for this trailer. I mean, to be utilized as much as possible, but they're still struggling with some siting stuff for that.
So is it fair to say that like $2,500 would be, well, let's see how long this lasts?
Yeah.
And you, I'm sorry.
Let's go to Ally, and then Brooke, and then Aaron.
I may have missed something in this conversation, and if I did, I apologize now. The vendor that you're talking about with the portable shower trailer, knowing that the showers at HSC are not, like somebody in a wheelchair can't get into the shower at HSC right now. I'm sorry, Housing Matters. Or the bathrooms that I don't think are currently working at the moment, because there's like yellow caution tape and.
Sure.
Anyway, so is that?
Which units are you asking about?
Well, we're talking about the showers right now, right?
Yeah, but we're talking about two different shower units. We're talking about AFC, which is the Association of Faith Communities. They already have a purchased 2-stall shower unit that exists. And then we're also, a moment ago, we were talking about Dignity on Wheels.
Either. Are they ADA accessible?
One is, the other's not. AFC is not. But it's purchased. They have it.
Right, no, I mean, they own it. I'm just, at least one of them has to be, especially with Housing Matters not having an ADA accessible shower.
Yeah.
Or toilet.
Yep.
Bathroom.
Brooke.
Was this not in their budget when they got the money from DEEP to monitor?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Aaron?
I was just going to provide informationally that Megan had some rough estimates of modeling costs based on the experience of the River Street camp. And I don't remember what those numbers were, but there were sort of some estimates of what this would cost.
And I'd like to just add that I'm not sure if AFC has this in their heat money, but right now, to Serge's comment, AFC right now goes to a church, and that church is responsible for that. This idea would be that AFC would go further in, as it were, and not necessarily be associated with an entity that could do the laundry.
They do the warming center on Sundays, they just started that, but we're gonna do a couple things that are not churches. So I could understand that they might not do this.
Yeah, the idea is to address that barrier.
Further debate or discussion on this motion? Seeing and hearing all debate having ceased, we will move to a vote. By unanimous consent, the motion will be adopted. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing and hearing none, the motion is adopted by unanimous consent, so ordered. The subcommittee has one more, is that correct? Or
Well, it relates to both of these other motions, and you know, this is, the idea is to monitor use rates for both of these locations. You know, and effectiveness and impacts on immediate surroundings to future inform long-term facility solutions.
I'll second the motion.
there's a motion and a second. There we go. Motion and a second under discussion.
And the idea is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, the idea of that motion is to really highlight the idea that we want this to move towards something more permanent. This is not the end solution, and so we want to make that clear to City Council when we make this.
My question on that
Search
is,
and then, yeah, and then Brooke, search.
the city monitors it, or the city is getting the numbers from them because they're monitoring themselves?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that the city gets those numbers from the case managers, that sort of thing.
Brooke. Brooke, same question, huh? Okay. There we go. Is there further debate or discussion on this motion?
Does it make a difference if you said to monitor and make public use rates effectiveness?
Without objection.
Wait, I'm sorry.
To just add to monitor and make public the use rates.
Oh, yeah.
So, that'll be accepted, friendly amendment. Thank you. Is there further debate or discussion? Seeing, hearing none, the motion will be adopted by unanimous consent. Does anyone wish to object? The motion is adopted by unanimous consent and so ordered. One more subcommittee, I believe, or do you have further? You're complete. Anybody else?
I can ask a couple questions.
Please.
The porta potties, when do you think they would be? Like, I heard you.
We had updates from Ron in particular about two potential sites. Again, I think not quite ready, is that correct, Megan, to state publicly where those sites would be, but there's meaningful movement on that, and I don't know, does Ron have an estimate of when?
We're just working through all the departments and the ducks in a row. Make sure that they can actually be actualized.
Has there been any conversation of needle boxes in the porta potties?
We discussed that, we had some discussion about that, and so, and I actually talked openly about that with the downtown streets and got their input too, and my concern with that, personally, my concern with that is, and this goes back to something Frank said when he was a member of the committee, and that is making these portable units safe, like substance use situations, and their intention is to meet the need in which they were built to do, which is a facility for somebody to use for a restroom. So my concern is physically tying those two things together will just facilitate the very thing I think that we want to be concerned about, which is having somebody using that as a space to utilize their substances. And taking up that space.
Yeah.
And to be clear, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't think a needle box makes anyone use.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's safe to have the assumption that if one uses a needle box, for the majority of people who use them are substance users. I think it's safe to make that assumption. So I'm not saying it's going to create substance users out of people who just want to use the facility. I'm saying it ties those things together, and I don't think they need to be. I think that's a restroom, and it should be open to people who need a restroom, because that's all we keep hearing.
Yeah.
A safe substance use place, that's a totally different conversation.
But we also get complaints about needles on the floor, needles in the toilets, needles in the trash.
Right.
In bathrooms.
No, and
that's a private place that people have. That's their own private place. That's all I'm saying.
I think you're making a great point, and that is the dilemma.
Yeah. And my only other question on hygiene stuff, are the 12-20 things moving towards the laundry, the shower thing, and
The shower unit is not moving up, the bathrooms are already up, and we have double bathrooms for
but the shower trailers will be in the March.
We are renting it monthly. The intention was to have it through as long as River Street existed at River Street.
Because there's not a place to put out the water.
No, we don't have a place to get in the water. We have a place to put out the water. We don't have, the water pressure up there is not strong enough to support a shower. We're hoping AFC with their.
Ally?
I was just going to say, I don't think having the sharps container inside a restroom elicits drug use. The drug use is going to happen regardless, and it's answering, it's in response to a need that is already being created. So we're not, and again, personal opinions, but on a personal level, which would you rather? Would you rather see a sharps container inside a portable restroom where it's going to happen anyway? Or would you rather see the needle sitting outside on the ground when you walk by?
I will answer the first part of the statement you made is, I don't think that putting a needle box creates drug use. It doesn't.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
I understand that.
Right. Okay. So to be clear, what I'm saying is that the portable unit becomes, my fear is that the portable unit will become that safe space for them to use. And I think, and I think that I think it ignores the rest of the community that want to use it as a restroom. So some of the complaints I hear in the community are, I can't use the portables because there's somebody passed out in there. So that's a problem, especially if it's in the middle of the night, and because we're proposing 24-hour units here, right? So if I have to relieve myself in the middle of the night and there's somebody passed out in there, then that's a problem. I think you're right. I think that it might, I think you're probably right, I think it might not deter that, but I don't know that we need to marry those two things together.
They already are, is my point.
Yeah, and I think you could be right about that. Yeah, and again, back to what I said earlier, that is the dilemma. Yeah.
Further on this, Candace was, and then we'll go here. Just Candace.
Yeah, just on this kind of discussion about mules and substance use, and I want to make sure that we're providing for the emergency needs of people who are using substances, and then at the same time, I also want to be aware of folks who are in recovery and allowing for them to be able to go into a bathroom without having needles around, which can bring you back into, I mean,
Having lived a 12-step recovery life for 5 or so years, about, 10 or 15 years ago, I've lived the program in every aspect of my life. Today, I'm responsible, but I continue to utilize tools that the program teaches you. An addict is going to understand a sharps container in a bathroom better than somebody who doesn't.
No, but what I'm saying is in the recovery process, if you go in to use a public restroom and there's a big old sharks container in there, like.
They get it.
Yeah, okay.
Trust me. I mean, it may trigger some people, yes, I mean, because each individual is different. But as an addict, you know, you have either wanted that box there, not wanted that box there, don't care that it's there because that's not even your trip.
Sure.
I mean, it's not gonna, I think an addict understands a box for needles to be safely disposed of and appreciates it more than it triggers an addiction response to want to go use.
Got it, okay.
Kevin, and then Megan.
This is just because I'm new here. Is there a committee or subcommittee working on a safe injection site?
No, not specifically.
Not specifically.
One of the subcommittees probably that would fit in their venue somehow.
There's public health and hygiene and safe sleeping in campgrounds, so those are the two that.
We've had a conversation.
Megan, I think that's.
I just wanted to share that when we were in the discussion of the siting of the porta potties, we also talked about the siting of the kiosks. And the kiosk sites are set, but the new porta potty sites, there could be additional kiosks that are added. Right now, the county gave the opportunity to fund 3, and those are sited. We could request additional kiosks to be sited near or adjacent to portable potty, or portable, and that was in, that was kind of in the discussion. So it's not that these two could come together, stuff outside, like the kiosk outside. Yeah.
Karen, and then Candace. Karen.
The other piece of information that came up in our conversation that I think is relevant is just this question of utilization of the kiosks. And so obviously that depends to some extent on whether they're cited appropriately, but the data is kind of lacking in terms of like how high utilization there will be, period. And so I think that's another area where we could probably use more objective information. When these new ones go in, how many are actually being deposited by individual people as opposed to by others that are going around collecting syringes.
Candace.
Yeah, I sent Ron a human waste heat map that there is for downtown, and I was just wondering if there's a similar heat map for needles and everything. I know it takes a long time to build one of those.
Did y'all hear what Megan just said? There is.
Okay.
Further on this? Further on this?
Candace, can you share that map with us?
The human waste one? Yeah.
Brooke?
Yeah, and that heat map the county has, they just released it.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
The county released that, the heat map is in the syringe services program presentation that they gave us.
Thank you. Further on this item? Keith?
We did provide a very detailed proposal to the city manager's office, to Justin Cummings, and to yourself, which addressed a great many of these issues. It appears that that has just disappeared, and a lot of the information that was provided is, seems to have vanished as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none.
We have thought to search, to respond to you, we provided a very detailed outline of security. We thought of the issue of people passing out or having heart attacks or, you know, being just too stoned to get out of the toilets, all those things. We provided a detailed accounting of that, both financial and security, and all of those things have been provided to the city and to this committee. And so with that, for whatever reason, a lot of those items are never discussed again. The siding locations, which were carefully thought out, don't see that, and this is like when did I provide it? When CACH first started. And so I'm just, it's kind of shocking. I've already rented a bunch of toilets during the time that we've had this discussion and had them taken by the city. So if you want, you know, I don't know, if, there's a lot of us that actually go out there and do this all day, all the time, you know, and we provide you with proposals, and it would be great if they were like acted upon by this council. It would be, you know, I just think that it's been thought out. We've been out there for decades. We're trying to help you. Where does this information that we provide you disappear to? Thank you.
Thanks.
Without objection, all debate having ceased, without objection, the motion will be adopted by unanimous consent. Does anyone wish to object? Seeing and hearing none, the motion is adopted by unanimous consent. So ordered. Further reports.
Well, we have the Public Engagement Subcommittee, which was originally proposed to sunset, and with the departure of Amy from the group, I believe that we have decided we'd like to continue it and work in collaboration with the other subcommittees, so it's not going to be set aside. I'm going to try to draft Evan here.
I thought you might.
Step up, yes, and it's the voluntold, as we used to call it. The other reports really cover what we did, so we're done.
Very good. Thank you. We are on Roman numeral 7. This is oral communication. This would be an opportunity for anyone to address the body on a matter under the CACH's jurisdiction, but not on the agenda tonight, not on the agenda tonight, not on the agenda tonight, so we're very clear about that. Keith, good evening.
Yeah, thank you. So it's been talked about a little bit. Well, first of all, it would be wonderful if somebody could place the discussion of the camp on next time's agenda. So between now and then, Serge and I will have worked out all the details, but if it can be placed on if there could be a vote to place that on the agenda tonight so that it happens before too many more people perish. And remember, people are out there cold, uncomfortable.
It's raining.
Rainy. Poor Brent Adams can't get his warming center going because of whatever logistical problems are going there. And people are coming to us. Many new people who are newly homeless are coming to us desperate. So I want to, these are, you know, they're desperate and they're losing their belongings and I'm spending hundreds of dollars a week on replacing the things taken by the city. So that's one item. The second item, which was a little bit touched on, is that the proposals that Andy Mills has made, both on his own personal blog, the day before the police raid at Camp Phoenix, plus the more even outrageous things that he said at the Wednesday meeting at Santa Cruz Neighbors, are things that I would hope this body would immediately denounce as human rights violations, which they are. And to try to stop, to have this body say, we are opposed to the brutality that is being suggested by the proposals that Chief Andy Mills is making to the public on this little tour that he's doing. They all violate Martin versus Boise. I understand that the city attorney's meeting, the California League of Cities, has decided this workaround will meet the standards of Martin versus Boise. But just and it's being presented by the city as though, well, it's for everybody. It's not targeting homeless people. But how many homeowners actually go and set up tents on sidewalks before 10 o'clock in the evening and then take their tents down by later than 7 in the morning? Very unusual for homeowners to do that. So it doesn't actually affect everyone equally. Because I just really don't think there's probably been even one example of a homeowner who set up a tent outside of those parameters on a sidewalk in this county. That's very unlikely. The other thing, so a lot of it seems like the discussion is from a perspective of people who have not really spent a lot of time living outside with no resources. And you can see that reflected in Andy Mills in that particular law because, you know, if it's raining tonight, you know, if I were a person with a tent right now, I would have put it up as soon as it started raining. But then I would end up getting arrested for that, right? So, but instead of getting arrested, you get to work for the police for free, cleaning the streets, according to his proposal. And you don't even need to go before a judge to find out if you're guilty or what the evidence is. The officer will stand, according to Andy Mills, will talk to you and say, hey, would you like a citation? And then go, you know, which you will not go to court to have heard anyway. And then you'll get the ticket, and then you'll get the assessment. And then you'll be just like my friend Ben Woods, who's now having his 40-hour-a-week job salary taken from him because he got camping tickets when he lived outside for 2 years in Santa Cruz. So now he's got a 40-hour-a-week job. He's blessed that he got it moved into a car, and now the county is taking his money because he had been living outside and got these tickets. So now you're in this dilemma, okay, I could get this huge bill of tickets and then have my wages taken once I finally get settled enough to have a 40-hour-a-week job, or I can just, at the discretion of the officer standing there in front of me, go wash cars down at the police headquarters for the afternoon, and instead of whether I'm guilty or not. So this is, many of these things are frightening. And the fact that we are really coming to this point when you review the Trump administration and Robert Morbaugh's policies that he's advocating, and you look at what Steinberg and Newsom are advocating, and now you've got this thing with Martine Bernal, and you have other cities following with Bernal too, but with with the chief of police, which is happening in cities across the state and across the country, and we're seeing in a very dangerous situation where it is not lost on people outside that we are not long for being forced into FEMA camps. And you know people, virtually everybody is walked out on the streets that I know of, is oh yeah, I love having us in a FEMA camp, but I'm going to fight back. What kind of a situation is that? That we are, as Americans, we are able to sit by and allow the discussions that we are hearing with Andy Mills and with the governor and with the president about the dehumanization of people living outside and the medicalization of the system. We talk about case managers. Most of us don't need any case managers. We need a large enough wage to afford to live in an apartment. This idea that people are all about problems and they're broken and they need to be fixed, that model has to be erased, because that is why we can talk here and do these things all the time, endlessly in circles. But the reality is, until we realize that the people outside don't need to be fixed, it's the system that needs to be fixed. They were placed there on their, when I started feeding the hungry, they didn't even do counts of homeless people. There were so few homeless people. And it's not because between 1980 and 2020 that millions of Americans decided the greatest thing is to go shoot heroin and live in the park. That's not what happened. What happened is our houses millions of houses, at least 8 million houses, were seized by the people that are currently in power, who are now investing in building these crazy things like across the street, which will sit empty probably for decades, just like the one at the end of Pacific Ave. That this is this is what is going on. We got to get over this model, and we got to take this seriously. And the problem is that we're in those last days before people are slowly moved into a large navigation center. And then eventually from the large navigation center, they'll be processed and they'll be sent to a nice, great place where they can get services. Because, and anybody here that's a case manager, there's no questions about economic status or how you became homeless or anything like that. It's all about whether you're mentally ill, you got a criminal record, or you're an addict of some sort. We got to get past that. That's why people don't cooperate with these programs, because we don't want to say, I'm an addict, I'm mentally ill, just so I can qualify for a voucher, which you may get, and then an apartment, which you will never get. Housing Matters houses 110 people a year out of the thousands that live on our streets. So that having case management and navigation towards someplace, there isn't someplace to be navigated to. So, this is a crisis. This is a crisis where you might get to be lucky enough in the next few years to go, wow, I sat on the CACH committee, and isn't that sad that they don't actually allow the people out of the shelters that we work so hard to advocate for, and that they get just to stay there. And we've seen all this language before, these failing homeless people in other countries at other times, and we're at that precipice. So it's up to us in the next couple of months to say, no, this is the line between forced incarceration of people living outside because of their economic status, or we're going to allow people to be free, and we're going to actually address the crisis as it really is. And this is an emergency. This is like, we can't be like Mickey Mousing around. I could have put out toilets all over town. I could be housing people myself if the government was not in the way.
Brooke, you got something you wanted to say? Don, you got something? Mr. Lewis, good evening.
First of all, it's hard to follow. I really believe that he knows what it is to deal with people who we're trying to serve. Mikey's waiting for me out in the car. I'm just here because I want to say thank you to all of you for the time that you've put in. I want to say that no longer am I a homeless vet. Someone has donated an RV, and now someone wants to donate a trailer. So I come from a personal experience. It's nice to start some relationships. I'd like you guys to consider the asset of Cabrillo. I'm going to be a student so I can organize what I've talked about, and know that over the hill, if we work with the region of student government, all kinds of possibilities come. I've asked you to think about the asset of our UC and our Cabrillo, so maybe later those subcommittees, we can do some white papers, applied research. So use the asset of Mr. Weinstein, who talked about he didn't want to have kids sleep in the car on campus, but he wanted to do something about the homeless issue. Get our city council to look at how we can do things to see youth voice and student empowerment, not only as an international human right, but something that could focus on homeless. So last year, I just learned of the Tent of Abraham, putting out an email that talks about things that I believe in. If you participated in the march, if you participated with all the different law enforcement out there at Loud Nelson, that's our Santa Cruz. That's the people like Fred and others who have put their time into progressive solutions. Please, if you come to next steps, don't walk away from action research, or what we called in the past youth action teams, student action teams. Give it up to them. see what they would do to work with the warming center. I appreciate being here, and what I really appreciate is Mikey, if you don't know him, you want to talk about someone with experience. He's a young Marine. We've got to come from where the money is. The federal government has all that Section 8 money. How do we put it together to do some things in housing? Thank you for what it is. I will be at your meetings, but please, you're not going to do the research. Not that I don't like the Wisdom Council, but please, Fred, do you remember Future Search? I know you're not going to answer, but Tony Hill and others talking about the Future Search with video and the book. We've got to come from a process. I am a stand for later my Peace Church of having women rise for the homeless. So if you had a good idea, you don't get to say it when we cultivate the good ideas. Emily Riley, she sourced it. So let's get that city council, let's look at next steps, let's create a plan. Thank you for letting me talk, but maybe I have some good ideas. Key is the next generation commission, so that 18 to 40 begin to be involved, not just for homeless, but how about, Don, you remember, how about a youth mayor, a youth city council? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Members, good evening, sir.
Hi, my name is Wes White. I'm from Salinas. I have a homeless union, Salinas Monterey County Homeless Union. Also working with Continuum Care in Monterey and San Bernardino counties. And I'm surprised that there's no kind of coordination with this committee or the county and the city as far as continuum care. Most people I think you're gonna find most people have already signed up for housing and everything else. There's no alternative. I think counting tents and RVs and cars as affordable housing units should be a priority of the city. And I wish we'd make a recommendation of that. I mean, when we first came here, it was because of Ross Camp. And we haven't done anything toward making another Ross Camp. I mean, you got 800, 1,000 people that you're supposed to account for somehow. And so far, what the city's coming up with is a lot of no. No, you can't be here. No, you can't be here. That's not helping anybody. That's no yeses anywhere. And these are members of your community that have lived here a really long time, maybe even some of them all their life. We're not really valuing people, and that's tragic. And it seems like this subcommittee has been going around in a hamster wheel. I'm disappointed. It's 3 hours later, and here we are finally getting to the last agenda item. And I'm not sure we've really done anything, although I'm really happy about the showers coming, hopefully. And but you just need to make organized space, maybe be a minimal standard. If there's no health and safety issue, you should pass people over. The whole thing, you're gonna make downtown a park. We're changing words so that we can use them the way we want to, which in reality is fraud, something to that effect. And it's amazing to me how easy it is for this to keep on happening. I think there's easier ways to coordinate, and ignoring food not bombs is one of those ways that you're diverting progress and success. And we should be opening up sanctioned encampments and allowing people to be somewhere, anywhere, as long as they're not making a mess and they're not being criminals. You catch them in the act of being a criminal. Otherwise, I don't know why we're blanket openly discriminating against people. Just because they can afford rent doesn't mean that they should leave.
Thank you, sir. By way of just following up on something for you, if you haven't read the report that this body presented to the City Council together with the 9 recommendations to the City Council, you may want to look at that. I'm simply responding to the notion that this body hasn't done anything, so I would like to point that out to you.
Impact.
Reference that. Good. There being no further business to come before the body, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Stoney?
I'd like to offer one point of information that was on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
The previous meeting, Taj, you brought up a question about a homeless court. And just to inform everybody, keep you in the loop, Serge, Taj, and I will be meeting
Thank you,
There's
sir.
a version already on
Yes.
in place for you on that, something more comprehensive in the fall.
Thank you, sir.
You might have a question to staff. Where is the city at with the coordinator position?
Oh, the interviews are ongoing, so we're
Okay.
still in the process.
Move to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn has been offered. A second, it's a non-debatable motion. Those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Body is adjourned.